Okay, great. Welcome, everybody. I'd like to call to order the Planning Board meeting for November 5th, 2019. It is just a few minutes after 7 o'clock. We have first on our agenda the continued public hearing for 425 Whitney Street, special permit, site plan approval, and special permit per Groundwater Protection Overlay District. This is for the applicant Starus AST. And when we last left our hearing 2 weeks ago, we talked about putting together some additional questions that the board was interested in terms of pursuing a peer review as part of this process. So what everybody should have in front of them now is a draft of the questions. I guess this is a memo with questions that were put together, and it looks like edits. Amy, these are your edits?
Yeah, mostly wordsmithing and just, it wasn't like major changes.
Okay, did everyone have a chance to look at the edits?
Sorry, I did not.
No, the edits, Amy had sent, just the, I don't want to say just, this afternoon, so that's why I printed everyone a copy of it.
Okay. So if we could just take a few minutes to take a quick look through that. It looks like mostly word changes, Amy?
Yeah, yep. And some things I didn't take out were when it says planning board, that's just a notation, right, Kathy, in between parentheses. Those wouldn't be included in the memo?
Yes, those were my notes to you to let you know. We can include them. I can reword it, but that was just to let you know, what we had on hand, or, how it sort of fit in with that question. Mm-hmm. So just to, I know you're looking at it.
Oh, no, sure, go right ahead.
So Carrie, just as we had done, as we had talked about at the last meeting, so what we did as staff is we got together first, myself, Fred, and Bob, just compared our notes, took your notes, extremely helpful, and, rounded out the memo, and then sent that out to everybody. Oh, before we sent it out to you, as we talked about at the last hearing, we reached out to Starus, in particular to Steve and Rich, who had done the presentation, and in case they had copied down any questions that any of us had missed. So they have a copy of the memo that you're all looking at, and I just gave them Amy's edits. Okay, so everybody that's involved with the project has.
Oh, good, thank you.
Okay, what you're looking at.
There was a question here of, is there a difference between a peer reviewer and an expert analysis?
It's just called peer review. It is the same thing.
So it's an expert that, like it's someone who's an expert in the field?
Yeah, that's who you want to.
Yep, okay.
You know.
When I read peer review, I didn't know if it was like one company can review another company, like a peer.
No, it's a consultant,
Okay.
but it's it's
Qualified.
right. It's qualified peer reviewer.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Did everyone have a chance to look through quickly? Down here, okay?
Yep.
Okay. Why don't we go through just quickly section by section to see if there are any comments from either the board or the applicants as well. So why don't we go, are there any concerns or comments about any of the edits to the sheet with blue? Well, I guess we can go by section and do that. But I was just going to work off of this document, if that's okay with everyone. Okay. Okay, so they're starting with conformity with section 7.2 submission requirements per the planning board's rules and regulations. So any comments from the board on 1, 2, or 3? And is this a public document, by the way, for anyone?
The rules and regulations are I've stuck them in my zoning book, but they're not part of the zoning bylaw. The planning board adopted, basically, board should adopt rules and regulations as far as, it's all about submission, process. So the planning board did, a few years ago, and so what it is, I just wanted to say, I'm hoping that this is where we're gonna add in the design review into the rules and regulations, but that's, another subject. But, so again, the rules and regulations are not anything that's approved by town meeting, they're approved by you. And, we had a consultant, we worked with a consultant to come up with these. And so, again, it's all of the behind the scenes of, what's particularly about a site plan, what's in a site plan, what is the applicant, what should they include with their application. So they're online, and they're just as a separate document in my office, it's just a handout. And if folks don't have, a copy of it, I can certainly make you copies for the next meeting. But this particular section, Section 7, all has to do with site plan and what's incorporated into the site plan.
Great. Also, I was wondering, is this actual document a public document? So all of these questions, will this?
Oh, what we're looking at tonight? Yes, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, anything that comes out of our office is.
Okay, great. So for anyone who doesn't have it in front of them, they'll be able to access it.
Yes, we have a couple extra copies. I have, I think 2 of Amy's. Yep.
Okay. So starting with any comments on that first section there from the board? Just the first conformity of section 7.2. Any comments or questions from the applicants?
No, that's fine. Some of that information is on the plan itself, but we'll happy to provide a narrative, and I reviewed those submission requirements. We'll provide all the information.
Okay, great. Let's see. And for whatever you already have included, you're just one step ahead, so don't worry if,
Yeah,
yep.
if you want a narrative form, we can do that as well.
Okay. Light manufacturing use, so any comments, this section goes through the second page. So if you need to take a quick minute. Looks like wordsmithing from Amy. Is there one more copy?
Yep. Yep, that's it. So these are just drafts, so everyone understands that.
Okay, so there's one comment. Amy, did you want to speak to your comment on D, looks like?
It was just kind of wordsmithing. I just wrote, instead of what will be stored, I wrote list of materials to be stored in the building and on site, including amounts, descriptions, and hazards. Is that?
Oh, okay, so, and then you, what, any materials on the trucks? Is that a question, or?
I did. I think we had it
It was in
further
another.
down
Okay, so
when we
that's,
got to the trucks,
okay.
but we can double check.
Any additional comments from the board?
But I definitely wanted to know that, so we should see if it's on there.
I mean, I think it's helpful to use the, describe the treatment center versus what is it. Maybe something more descriptive might be helpful to understand versus, so one thing which says, it's a room where we do this at. Maybe that's just gonna help the board.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the whole first part is just really wordsmithing, and then I did just look down, and under the trucking, number 4, it says list the materials that's stored in trucks overnight.
Okay, does that address your comment?
Yeah, yeah, because I think in number 1, light manufacturing, if it's not, I think, yeah, not only on the building, the site, what is coming in on the trucks, like hazards, if there's any hazards that we have to be aware of.
Where is that one?
I guess maybe it has to be added into D.
So is that, do you mean permanently stored? List of materials to be permanently stored in the building?
What's materials we stored in the building?
Right, I'm just trying to think. It It says relate manufacturing. I mean, definitely the materials to be stored in the building, those are on the groundwater list, right?
Yeah.
And
Well, those are mostly like liquids
acetone,
and chemicals.
yeah, yeah. But there was one more, it's gonna be in front of groundwater, right? There's one more chemical. But I guess if you put it in narrative form,
Materials is broader than, in my mind.
yeah.
So add permanently, is that, so list of materials to be permanently stored in the building?
I'm trying to think.
Well, I would want to know if it's hazardous, whether it's permanent or not, coming on through, right? Would we?
Right.
Well, so D, how I looked at D was, this was just all under the, the use of the building. So the use of the building is for the sterilization of product. And I interpreted that is that this is what would be, always in the building. And then like what Amy or Michelle was saying, down in the trucks section, I know you had it someplace.
Number 4,
Karen.
it says list of materials.
Yeah, on the top of page 3, the list of materials, if anything is gonna be stored, in the trucks, on the site.
Okay.
Just for
But-
clarification,
No, go ahead.
on the groundwater,
Yes.
the expectation is that the list of materials that are toxic or hazardous to the groundwater are to be reported with the application, whether they're permanent or temporary.
Okay.
It's supposed to be the worst-case scenario of any hazard that could happen and spill in the parking lot or in the building
Right,
to
okay, so that's all
groundwater.
groundwater's list?
Yes.
Okay.
But I noticed, like, the groundwater list, it does have the acetone and there were 3 things. Is there anything else hazardous coming in on the truck that's gonna be processed and sterilized?
So should D be list of hazardous materials stored in the building? Including an alcohol restriction?
Well, again, groundwater will look at all the hazardous materials and whatever you report, and we have appropriate safeguards, and the groundwater committee recommends approval of, that's what they will be limited to have on site if the permit is granted.
Okay.
So there can't be anything else added later on. What we're looking for is worst-case scenario, deal with it appropriately, and then that's what's permitted, and that's what will be regulated going forward with the zoning inspector and the fire department.
So nothing more hazardous, nothing hazardous will come in on the truck to be processed?
If they don't ask for it,
Okay.
it won't be part of the permit.
Okay.
So I think that, that adding hazardous in there does make the most sense, because based on some of the information from the hearing last month, the material that's being sterilized I don't believe is hazardous. It's from, anything from bandages to, dog food. I think I heard dog food, right? Dog treats or something, some kind of food, yeah. So it's a wide range of, that's not the list that you're looking for.
But won't some of them be biohazards? Some of them, they're gonna be sealed, but they're not like equipment from hospitals or,
It's all brand new, I'm sorry, it's a board.
That's okay.
It's all brand new, single-use devices that are from the
Oh,
manufacturer
okay.
and sterilized and then used afterwards.
okay.
There's nothing that's reclamation like that.
So the other materials go to the other site?
None of my sites do that.
Oh, okay, I thought they used to get into equipment like colonoscopies and they'd come through and get sterilized. I think that's what I read on your website.
Yeah, no, this is, that's a different division.
Yep.
That deals with, repair of instrumentation.
Right.
But
So everything in Northborough is all brand new?
That's correct.
Okay, I guess that's what I was trying to figure out.
So would hazardous satisfy with that, what you're saying? Okay, so a list of hazardous materials.
And not necessarily specific to groundwater, though, because would there be anything that's vaporous or gaseous that we would?
I don't believe so, but we'll review it and if there is,
Okay.
we'll ask for the direction to take.
I can make it clear now, for groundwater, we're looking for things that are hazardous to the groundwater supply.
Exactly.
If there's propane or something else, I believe that's handled through the fire department or any kind of gaseous material that could be explosive but not harmful to the groundwater. So that's not what we're looking for at groundwater, but it may be something you want to let the board know about.
So maybe if it's a list of hazardous, volatile, or flammable materials, would that satisfy?
You can say hazardous, and it will cover all those things. What I want to make clear is that groundwater is only looking at the
Yes.
parts that are hazardous to groundwater.
Yeah,
Got
that's
it.
what I wanted to make sure.
All right, so hazardous will include. Okay,
So we're changing it?
so a list of hazardous
Hazardous.
materials.
So list of hazardous materials to be permanently stored in the building and on site.
And they know that volatile and flammable are included.
Okay, any other comments down here on that section? Okay, any comments down here?
No.
Okay, any comments from?
That's fine.
No, okay. Okay, groundwater section. So let's see, there's a note here.
Yeah, I can explain that.
Sure.
Or why I put that in there. Carrie, I just taken that from some of your notes, the question being, on number 1, is there a separate site plan for the concrete plant? So I just wanted to re-inform or, let the board know that already everything to do with the concrete plant is being asked for, and it's already written into review letters and an order of conditions from the Conservation Commission, and then also the review letter from the Groundwater Advisory Committee. So I don't necessarily, what I'm suggesting here is I don't think that you need that question, is there a separate site plan for the concrete plant? Because anything having to do with the concrete plant is going to be reviewed by the town engineer and the conservation agent. And that's already been memorialized in the order of conditions from the Conservation Commission.
Okay, does that go through the committees as well, or is that a meeting, is that at the next groundwater meeting that'll be reviewed, or when will it be? If I wanted the benefit of seeing it myself, what forum would I go to?
To look at the site
If I want
plan?
to see the plans and the conversation and all of that.
Well, it's gonna happen in-house between Fred and Mia, the conservation agent. They're the ones responsible for the review of it.
My understanding was that because it was a part of the construction process, not part of the site plan approval, the applicant agreed with the Conservation Commission at their meeting in order to get their public hearing closed and have the order issued, that whatever information that the commission asked for, lots of information in their order, and whatever information was required or requested, it would be reviewed in-house by staff, and we would make appropriate edits to the plan to make sure that the groundwater and the resource areas under the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction were protected during construction, and that if there wasn't a complete agreement, then they would go back to the Conservation Commission for kind of settling any disputes. But it wasn't available then. As far as I know, it's still not available now for us to be reviewing, and I expect it's something that we're going to get down the road because it involves the concrete plant contractor who's going to supply most of that information to the applicant's engineer and the applicant. They don't have it right now, but they wanted to move forward, and because that's part of the construction process and not the site plan approval, it was something that the Conservation Commission felt could be handled, much like we do on a lot of other projects. We have a pre-construction meeting. This one's just a little bit more complicated because there's an actual concrete plant or, being produced on the site during construction.
So the planning board can put conditions on construction, duration, and time, and things like that?
I guess you can put conditions on hours of operation or things of that nature.
So,
They just don't know what they are at this point.
okay, so at what point would it come back to the planning board for us to be able to review the intensity of it so that we could determine what's appropriate for the project?
My understanding, it would not.
Okay.
Yeah, that would just be handled by, I see Amy crossed it out, but I had put in there what the hours of operation would be. that it would be in accordance, with what's allowed in the zoning bylaw. That's down under trucks and traffic.
I just crossed it out because I knew it was, it's in our bylaws, so I knew. I didn't know if it was needed in the memo, because we do understand what the hours are, but they're 7 to 7 is what I read, I think.
Okay, so I don't see, where am I looking where you crossed out the hours?
Now she's under trucks and traffic.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So I added that you knew, when we talk about the impact of the trucks traveling, I just added, I put in that comment that, that the board is aware of what the hours of construction are, because they're outlined in the zoning bylaw. So, you can't do anything different than that. That's what the zoning bylaw allows.
But we can put a condition on construction duration.
As far as how long it takes something to get constructed,
Yeah,
no.
I don't know about that. I thought it said-
Otherwise, the old Lowe's building would have been finished.
I don't think you can regulate construction through zoning.
Yeah, it's all through the building code, and again, what we have is the hours of operation listed for construction.
But as a special permit, you can condition. So as part of the
Well,
groundwater
the-
special permit.
No, well, the special permit is just for the groundwater bylaw. The construction is all part of the site plan approval.
I believe the building inspector, when we met and reviewed the information that was going to the applicant from the board, was that the concrete plant was part of the methods and materials of construction that are regulated under the building permit, building code. So it's not part of the site plan approval,
Okay, is it part of the special permit?
No.
not the construction part, no.
So
The hours of operation they talked about could be for the building once it's completed, for the business once it's completed, it's not the construction,
but you can put a condition on construction duration.
No.
not that I'm aware of.
All right, I'd like to check that, because my concern is that we have a concrete plant on a site for what is allegedly a year, but what projects don't often run on time. So if this neighborhood is going to have a concrete plant being built with between 7 to 7 for a year plus, and the planning board has no say, and nobody apparently has a say, except for in-house review, I don't know, that doesn't sound right to me, so I don't know.
Well, it's not that, it's not that you don't have a say, that you have had a say, and you put it into the zoning bylaw, what you believe hours of construction should be. So that's, those are your zoning bylaws, that you've determined that that's what hours of construction are.
But where's the definition of temporary? So if it's temporary construction, what if it's 10 years? Is temporary 10 years? Is it 1 year? Is it 2 years? What is temporary construction?
I don't believe that, unless it's in the building code, that there's a definition of it.
I believe what they said is the concrete plant is temporary, it's not gonna be on-site permanently, it's not part of the business that they're asking a permit for. So that part is the temporary portion, and it's part of the construction in building the building and site work.
If I may, the owner is incentivized to get an economic return on its investment. If this owner doesn't want a 10-year construction project.
No, of
they're
course
interested.
not.
But I mean, they, in the temporary construction plan, there's some benefit to the neighborhood that it limits the number of trucks that are going to be coming and going to the site, because the concrete will be produced at a temporary plant for use. So that enhances the schedule for construction. Maybe the architect can tell us that without it, so there should be benefit to it as well. I don't want the board to lose sight of that.
Well, on the flip side, there's noise, dust, debris, whatever else that probably isn't contained to that property. So when the abutters can, if there's dust and if there's noise and if that's 7 to 7 for over a year, at what point does that infringe? That's not a benefit anymore. So I'd want to be able to understand what is involved with that and under what premise that just happens without any sort of conditioning, or what if there's delay and it goes on for 2 years, what responsibility did we have to make sure that didn't happen? And did we do our due diligence to make sure that we did everything that we should to make sure that doesn't happen? So that's my concern, and what I want to make sure that if we need to get advisement on that or whatever the case, this part doesn't, this note does not satisfy my concerns with this concrete plant. I don't know how the rest of the board feels. Any comments on that?
I do think that, I mean, it's important, I'd like to further look into it in terms of what we can control. And I'm not, things do have a way of overrunning, certainly in construction, and it's happened in this town before. And whether it's economic or otherwise, things can sit, and they can sit for a long time. And so I think I'd like for us to explore what we can do to help control that process.
Any other comments, Jen?
Have they used this on other sites that they've built before, are you aware of? Is that something we can, and in general, what is the length of time? It just depends on the job? Is that something that?
That is correct. We have used concrete plants before,
Mhm.
successfully. And it's our interest to get them done quick, get into operation. And so it's a vital part of our business in order to get quality concrete for the shields. The duration of this project, we expect will be in that 9 to 12 months that it will be, we'll be making concrete, you know. It kind of varies. We're not making concrete every day. It kind of varies depending on what's going on at that particular site. So it's truly in our best interest, you know, to get the work completed as quickly as possible. And, you know, we anticipate the work during the proper hours and follow that sort of thing. But, you know, we're in that 9 to 12 month kind of range.
And you guys are able to do that throughout the year, winter, summer, no matter what? Okay.
Again, it's in our best interest, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And once it's complete, it's removed because that's our parking area for the business, so.
Right.
It's something to linger beyond the project.
So here's a suggestion, you know, you could put a condition in the site plan. I mean, I know we're jumping ahead from the, you know, review letter, but you could put a condition in the site plan. I don't know how enforceable it is because it's temporary construction, but, you know, you could probably put a condition in the site plan approval that, you know, if the concrete operation, you know, is projected to go longer than 12 months, then, you know, the applicant needs to come back to the board and, you know, discuss with the board, you know, how much longer is it going to be, and, you know, are there additional measures that can be taken, you know, if there were, you know, complaints or something from the neighborhood. I mean, with any construction site in general, I mean, I don't know about concrete plants, but, you know, there's, you know, watering that has to take place, you know, just about every day on the site. There's tracking pads. I mean, there's ways of just industry standards about, you know, how to control, like, dust in particular, you know, dust and dirt, you know, whether it's into, you know, people's property and, or, you know, onto the roads. So just as an example. But
One thing you might consider as a condition would be that the building can't be occupied for the business until the concrete plant is removed from the site. That further incentivizes them that they can't do anything within the building until this process is taken care of. It's occupying the parking lot's gonna be in their way anyway. That further along moves the process. To Anthony's comments that, you know, projects have languished in town in the past is true, but it's usually because of the lack of construction rather than ongoing construction taking longer than was anticipated. Usually there's a stoppage in work because of, usually it's finances, much like the Lowe's building, and nothing happens for a long period of time, in which case there's no noise or dust to really be associated with it. But if they're working, there's no reason to expect that they wouldn't finish in the 12 months, in my opinion.
Okay, any comments down here?
Would that go along with like number 6 on page 4? Well, this is 4 of the one with the notes. it talks about a bond or escrow, you know? You're talking about certificate of, it's kind of like when we do a subdivision, you put on the certificate of occupancy. Is that what you're talking about? They can't use the building till it's removed?
Well,
Where are
subdivision-
you, Amy? I'm
Oh,
sorry.
well, now I'm jumping down to number 6 on page 4.
No, yeah, I just wanted to follow where you were, okay.
I'm talking, but it doesn't have anything to do with that. I was just talking back to what Fred said, and then I was gonna go
Subdivisions
forward.
are different.
Right.
Because they're building a road that's ultimately gonna be turned over to the town, so we have more control, because we need to accept that road as a public way and have it built to our standards. This is private property, and they're building to their standards, as long as it's in conformance with whatever permits they get from the town. We do on site plans say, for instance, the groundwater does it routinely. We recommend it with almost all your commercial or industrial projects, that an as-built plan be submitted prior to the issuance of the occupancy permit. And the as-built plan confirms that everything was built according to the plan, that the drainage is working, their engineer has to certify the drainage, the grades are right, the parking lots are right, the building is the right, meets the zoning. All those aspects are dealt with and confirmed to be done in accordance with the approved plan prior to the issuance of the occupancy permit. What we have done on occasion was, all that information is prepared on a draft. I generally review that, run it through the DPW to make sure all that the utilities are connected in their proper fashion. And if the top coat of asphalt, or there's some minor part of the project that's not done, we would give them the go-ahead, and then we would hold their bond from the earthwork board until the final as-built is done. But that's the kind of condition that I'm looking at, and that would certainly be recommended it was recommended from groundwater, it will be recommended, issued to the earthwork board as well. So, but there's a very distinct difference between the subdivision and the site plan.
Right. I just didn't know if a bond could be put on this if it didn't finish in time.
My name is the chair. There's a representative from the concrete contractor here, just to.
Oh, great.
So, hi.
Hi, great.
Thank you. I appreciate everybody's opportunity to say hello and thank you. And I just want to sort of comfort you on a number of things. The most important thing to understand about the concrete plan itself is without any due causes with respect to the quality control of the materials that have to go into this particular building. That is the most important thing. But the reason we've primarily gotten into the habit of doing this is really because it also is protection for the community as well. And what I mean by that is, when we have all the concrete trucks that are running back and forth from whatever the local suppliers are, you've got traffic issues, you have, all of the other concerns of, the commingling of the traffic with the issues that can happen in connection with trucking and so forth. So by having it on site, we've got the total control over it, and it's important to understand, as the owner of the concrete plant, to your concern specifically, the faster I can get this on and off this site is to my benefit. This has nothing to do with Steris per se. It is to the general contractor side of this. So there's a lot of benefit from our side to be able to move this in, to operate it quickly in accordance with whatever those requirements are. We've been able to do this all over the country for different projects other than this as well. But I just think it's important that everybody understand there's a lot of benefits that come from it, alongside the quality control of it and those other things. But most importantly is, we're not in a position where we're dealing with all these issues, because we want to get this concrete plant off of this site as quickly as we can to whatever the next site that we do is. It is not something that will become a long-term project, what it's supposed to be. We'll get it poured and in place. We'll be building the entire facility as it is. So while we'll be on site the entire time, the concrete plant will come in and get out as quick as we possibly can to make that happen. So I just wanted to clarify that for your purposes. This isn't some long-term plan. If it takes us a year or perhaps 2, to your point, to build it, then I'll have a lot of trouble. So that doesn't work from our perspective. So just want to make sure that you understand that, forgetting about it from Steris' side, it's really come from experience from ours to really protect the community to do that, because you can imagine the amount of these trucks that are going to be running back and forth. We're now only moving them a couple of hundred yards rather than moving them across the town or the county or whatever it's supposed to be, creating the traffic and the other issues we have. It's not to say there aren't other issues that get developed. I understand that. I understand that from the people that are here. We'll respond to each of those individually as we have to. But I want to assure you from experience, it's our goal to get in and get out as quickly as possible. So I just wanted to share that if I could.
Thank you. Just a question for you. For when you mentioned quality control, how do you use like an X-ray to check to make sure the concrete is solid, or what do you do for quality control?
So there's a certain specification that is created for purposes of the shield that is being created here. And we need to meet that specification. So what we do is we hire a third-party contractor that comes in and tests those materials, as well as Steris. So we actually have two different levels going in. As you might imagine, it's quite serious amounts of, of oversight that needs to go into this particular development of it. So from our perspective, we would have third-party engineers that would look at those details, and every load of concrete that we create is then tested for that purpose to ensure that it's appropriate to go into the shield.
Okay. And through X-ray technology or whatever?
The X-ray technology actually is
That's
I'll
the
let them
process.
speak to that. That's a process later.
Oh, so you
to
don't, as you
ensure
build
that-
as you do the concrete, you don't X-ray the concrete?
Well, the difference is that what we're doing now is talking about the concrete as it is made, and that is a specification that has to be met with, specific to different, both the materials that are used, the amount of air that is entrainment that is in the concrete, and other things that are related to it. Once it's poured in place, there are other details that happen with the roads.
Oh, and then when it's poured in place, then you X-ray it?
That's exactly right.
I have a question.
Sure.
If the construction hours are from 7 AM to 7 PM,
Yes, ma'am.
and the days get darker as they are now at 4 o'clock, would you still continue on during darker, or you just,
The answer is no, and rest assured, this isn't gonna be this concrete I'll look this way as I say this to the people to my right, this isn't something that's gonna go on all those hours every single day. The answer is no. This is very important that, while we can do it all year round, we would love to target this for a time that makes sense with regards to both lighting and everything else that is. We do not intend to set up big floodlights and be able to run this during different hours of the day. The reality is, we will comply with the hours that we were required to do so, and we'll be subject to that with the daylight as it is. Could we run into the dusk at certain times? Absolutely, we probably will, but the reality is, no, we're gonna be sensitive to that, we're gonna be sensitive to the community, and make sure that we comply with it.
yeah, that's what I was concerned with, how they do some of the
It's a fair
highway
concern.
projects with
It's a fair
big
concern.
floodlights, if you'd be using
That-
those.
That will not be the case. here.
Okay.
We intend, again, obviously, everything is dependent on timing of approvals and everything else, but it's not lost on everybody to say that if this started in the spring, it would allow us to do that through the summer, and we would be well through the concrete, and they're respectfully telling you that we need a year, and we probably will be in total, but we expect to be much quicker than that.
And just to, what is the name of your concrete plant?
It's actually, the name of our company is V. Paulus and Associates, and we're from Allendale, New Jersey. We're actually the development company. We just happen to own the concrete plants. These are fully modernized concrete plants specifically for those purposes. And the important part about that is that they have all of the most modern protections that you folks would be worried about, particularly the people to my right might be concerned about. In avoiding dust and avoiding noise and avoiding things. It's not perfect. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that everything is going to be as perfect as what it's supposed to be, but the reality is these are fully modernized facilities that are built in very modern times. This will be a brand new concrete plant that arrives here for this purpose when it does arrive, and my goal is to get it in as quickly as I possibly can.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other comments or questions? No. Over here?
Oh, just quickly, so obviously, so you're not bringing the concrete in from off-site, but you're gonna need to bring in all that raw material, and so I'd assume there's still gonna be the equivalent amount of trucking of that raw material in it. Is there,
It actually is an equivalent in a sense. There are, without question, there are raw materials of stone and sand and the concrete itself that need to come in. They come in as a bulk material. When you classify that against what would happen is if we were the actual making of the concrete and those trucks, there would be a far more amount of trucking that would take place with the concrete trucks themselves. I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, but the reality is that's how it works. Just based on on the development of the materials themselves and the way that those materials can be imported and on-site in the bulk that they are.
And I apologize if I missed it, but have you presented how many trucks are coming every day?
Not at this point, forgive me, this is my first dalliance here, so forgive me, I'm not sure what has been proposed, but we can certainly provide that. We've actually started working on it internally, knowing that that was gonna be concerns that you had. So we would be more than happy to share what that is and how that would work, so that you have a better sense about what it's going to be to make that happen, but it is not, I assure you that it is not to any substantive degree that's going to, greatly affect the surrounding community as it goes. It is really just a number of loads that come in during different periods of time. And depending on the amount of materials that we move in at time, it could vary, but it's not a situation.
Thank you, that was helpful. Any other comments on this section?
No, but even though it's going to be in front of groundwater, we would still get it back as part of our site plan, part of our letter, since we're asking for it. All the descriptions, I guess that's what we talked about, it's in front of groundwater and conservation, but on our letter, we asked for certain things about layout, data and facts, containment of stockpiles. We will still get that information as a planning board, right?
What, in reference?
Anything on this letter that we ask for, if they answer the questions, it won't just go to groundwater, it will come to us too, right? Anything on this letter that we ask? I guess I'm referencing groundwater.
Well, whatever gets submitted to the Groundwater Advisory Committee is a public document, and you'll get copies of it. What the Groundwater Committee was doing was agreeing with the Conservation Commission that the details of the concrete plant and how it was gonna operate would be something that would be dealt with later on, because it wasn't known at the time we had our public hearing, and it wasn't known when they went before Conservation. And because it's part of the construction process and not the site plan approval, it was something that we could deal with prior to construction, but after approval of the site plan.
Right, but the letter we're talking about today lists groundwater, and I don't think the questions are super hard, so those answers will probably come back to us also, right? I mean, it's just like water usage and source. I mean, you probably already know where you're gonna get the water from.
I don't know if you want to regulate construction, it just doesn't seem really,
Yeah, we just,
I mean,
I guess my question was, are we gonna get the answers to these? We only have like 2 questions there.
we can provide that information.
Okay.
Okay, so it sounds like, let's see. I mean, looking at these types of questions, Fred, are these things that you're looking at anyway for yourself, or are they not in line with what you would look for? Do we have anything listed that you would not ordinarily consider in your own evaluation?
Well, I don't typically deal with dust containment as part of groundwater. It'd be something that we will talk about during construction, and then the Board of Health and myself would be aware if there were any complaints from the neighborhood. They would normally go to the Board of Health, and then they would call me and say, what's going on out there, and we'd take a ride out and find out if there's a problem, but it's not necessarily something that I would look at in advance of with the groundwater application.
Madam Chair, if I may, too.
Sure.
Just on the dust control front, I mean, keep in mind the project is regulated by an order of conditions by the Conservation Commission. It'll also be subject to a construction general permit issued by NIMBYs under the US EPA. And dust control is covered in both of those things. So the project as a whole, aside from the concrete plant, is required to control dust contained within the property, as well as any sedimentation over the ground surface, not just to the wetlands, but beyond property lines, so.
Okay, great, thank you. So when those conditions are set, would you be able to share them either via email or whatever the case, if the conservation?
You mean after?
Yeah, after it's
In the
reviewed and
future?
discussed.
Yeah, I can give you a summary of what transpires after we get the information regarding the concrete plant and give it to the board. if
Well,
you'd
just the conditions that you have in order? You're listing out conditions, conservation will have
What we
conditions?
would expect there to be a plan of how things are gonna lay out on the site, and then some narrative as to how they're gonna schedule the operation, and that would be reviewed with staff. And we would be looking at each of these things, the containment, we're concerned about the wash water, things that, that are produced that are not part of the concrete itself. It's general construction practices that we're gonna verify are not getting into the wetlands or the groundwater.
Okay, great.
So, Carrie, I think partly too, to answer the question you just had, is on page 4, and I added it to, because again, we're talking about the concrete plant, but the specific 3 parts of the order of conditions, all pertaining to the concrete plant, I've just listed there for your, doesn't need to be, I didn't intend for it to be a part of this memo that goes to the applicant, because the applicant already has their order of conditions. But just to show you all that what, is already being required, by another board with the, wetlands jurisdiction. So that order of conditions, has already been recorded at the Registry of Deeds. And, so if you look at, I didn't give you the whole order of conditions, but it's condition number 46, and then there's A, B, and C.
Okay, so that was a part of their meeting.
Yeah, the public hearing's already been held by the Conservation Commission. And like I said, the order of conditions has been issued. And so that's how the Conservation Commission, in coordination with the town engineer, addressed the concrete plant, the construction of the concrete plant. And then back on, if I could just suggest this, back under groundwater, it sounds like that we could cross out, the first sentence is what would remain, data and facts presented that support, any request made by the town engineer on behalf of the Groundwater Advisory Committee. And then just my suggestion here is then just get rid of, is there a separate site plan? Get rid of what I put in italics, which again is just, was for your information. And then we go into, what we're looking for, what the board is looking for, is, drainage, runoff, impact on surrounding land, any possible flooding, containment of stockpiles, wastewater containment and disposal, and dust control.
Okay. Does that work, does that sound okay?
Mhm.
Yep. Okay. Sound good for, any comments from,
We'll provide that. It's a work in progress, as, there's jurisdiction of those other boards. We're providing it for those reports.
okay. Landscaping. This is a short one. Any comments on this one from the board?
I was, I was trying to figure out really how to reword this, because on one hand, or if it's even necessary, because on one hand, the, landscaping buffer is required by the zoning bylaw, so any applicant, has to conform to that. But based on the conversation at the last meeting, I think what you're looking for is more specific than maybe what was outlined in the site plan. I don't want to put words in your mouth,
I
but,
don't think the site plan had anything on the left side in between their facility and the neighbors yet.
well, they didn't have, right, they haven't added anything because there's existing vegetation, and that's what conforms to the, that's one way to conform to the bylaw. But I think what you're looking for is you're asking them, like I said, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you're asking them that, are there any, and maybe the word additional should be put in here, but, are there any additional buffers that they would be supplying? Or erecting, or planting, or
So when
And
I
then-
think of a sound wall barrier, I think of those big walls that you go down, you see up as you go down through the Mass Pike. Is that
Yeah,
what you were
I-
thinking of?
No, that,
What
those,
are you thinking
that particular one wasn't my, my wording. But also too, is you might, I mean, we can just, and maybe you're fine with their wording, and that's fine, it's your memo, but, we probably won't know until we, get the information about, the acoustics, or the, potential noise, what the decibel is of the concrete plant, and then, once this is up and operating, is there any, outside noise that people are gonna hear? So you almost wanna wait for that information, then to see if it needs to be mitigated. I mean, it may not need to be mitigated, it may not be an issue.
So I think we should wait, but on the landscaping buffer, the only issue that I've had, and I've spoken to the board several times about it, is that the applicant only has to have it last for a year. So that's the way the bylaw stands. So we've done this before with other applicants, much larger projects, where we've asked for it to, just extend on for, some people may never replace trees that come down, right? And then they're not required after a year, but in certain situations, we may ask for it to, like, at least exceed 10 years or something like that, so that it gives a little bit meat to the building inspector. If all of a sudden a row of trees come down for whatever reason, then the applicant has to put them back up, plant more trees. So,
We went to a class where you can actually write in perpetuity.
we did that with Walmart, actually.
Yeah,
So-
just because there was supposed to be a 100-foot buffer, and now it's dropped to 20, so you would hate to lose that landscape buffer as much as, there should be a landscape buffer in perpetuity, just to protect the neighbors from the visual or the sound.
Would you have an issue with that if we,
No, just keep
Okay.
in mind, I think the railroad grade is much higher than the sites of the planning landscaping may even be underneath the railroad line. You may not even see it. I don't know how many years it would take, depending on what you planted, but
okay,
I think the site plan, but the distance of the homes between the temporary line of aqueduct and the railroad line, and the elevation of that, the addition would be, I think maybe the roof of the addition is a little,
Possible.
yeah, so the vegetation along that nearest edge, perhaps if it were arborvitae, I don't know how long that would take. Beyond that.
Maybe I'll take a walk down
Yeah.
there, maybe if somebody wants to, walk the site.
Yeah.
I drove by, but I didn't know, in the drawing, like on the right side, it shows also the tree line, and on the left side near the neighbors, I don't see any trees. So that's why I was concerned about a landscape buffer. I didn't know if all the trees were coming down. So I know that there's shrubs there now, but will they stay?
Yeah, the intent is to maintain as much as possible, and a lot of that vegetated area is even beyond the subject property. So those will obviously stay. Can't predict what's gonna happen in the future, but as Stephen mentioned, there's that slope up to the railroad bed that's vegetated. The other side of the railroad tracks is vegetated across the aqueduct. There's a clear section, but there's a lot of vegetation there as well. And then even a lot of residential properties have their own vegetated buffers as well, too. So we do have that couple hundred feet of space that's buffered between the residences and our facility by both topography and mature vegetation. A lot of which sits on top of the higher topography, adding to the height of the buffer from the residential neighborhood.
And you guys don't have any idea what that height is by any chance, do you?
We have some estimations that we've put together, that we can include a little bit of information on, as part of the response to this.
Okay, so for this section, are we changing anything, or,
Is the wall barrier coming out? This,
so I guess,
Added that, but we could, see what comes back as the numbers, like Michelle said, sometimes along the highway, there is a wall barrier, say, we don't know how loud the chillers are, if they do come back, that they're super loud,
Yeah.
and something like that would help, it would help, but if not, then it wouldn't be included, I think, cause it's noted, it doesn't mean we're actually gonna do it. It was just, I guess it depends on what, we haven't gotten any noise tests back.
So the applicant's engaged, was working to engage an acoustic engineer to do that sound study, because we did hear that concern at the last meeting, and even back to the ZBA meeting in August. So that will be, that will be underway. And on the latest site plan too, which was not part of the application, but what we showed you guys at the last meeting a couple weeks ago, we are including a section of sound wall, that will be positioned between the chiller itself and the residences nearby to help cut the noise down.
Okay.
Now, should it surround the chiller? Like, if it's just on one side, is it really gonna stop the sound?
It's my understanding the sound travels in straight lines mostly. I mean, so towards the rear, it's just woods, and then the 429 Whitney Street parcel, the residences are all on the opposite side of the wall, so the sound would have to go around the wall to kind of go right away. But again, it'll be subject to review as part of that sound study, so if there's indication that we need a little bit more, we'll just put it on.
Okay, so maybe we leave it, but it's really just a bookmark for TBD? Does that sound okay to you guys, applicants?
That's fine.
Okay, next section, traffic and trucks.
I guess what we really wanted was what the hours and days of the week that the trucks would be going back and forth, whether it was during construction or after construction.
Okay. Any other comments on this section?
No?
No.
All set over there?
Can I just ask you on number 2, given that, that the way that it's described in the zoning, it's the last sentence there that I have on the bottom of 2. I didn't know if you wanted to leave in just the general sounds and backup beeps and alarms, because that's not anything that we as a town can prevent or ask them to shut off. So so I didn't know if you just wanted to leave it that what is the, noise associated with the trucks.
That's fine. So cross out general sounds or
Yeah.
whatever, and then the
We'll just get,
italics.
we'll get rid of mine, yeah.
Okay, anything else in this section? Anything from you? No. All set? Okay. All set, yep, okay. Next section is the review of application. And this is mostly related to safety, electromagnetic radiation, safeguards, et cetera. So I'm just gonna quickly, Amy, it looks like you did some just wordsmithing.
Yeah. But you can compare if you want. I think I just added during construction, testing, operation, the facility. And in A, where it said, do we need floor and ceilings, I wasn't sure what we meant like that, but what we meant by that sentence. Because it's definitely gonna have a floor and ceiling. But do we mean like a thicker?
Oh, it must be, yeah, I
It
think that
is.
was Millie's
Has to
comment.
do with the thickness of is the thickness of the floor and the ceiling the same thickness of the walls? That's
Yeah,
right.
I mean, I guess that's the question, right?
I guess,
Okay.
yeah, we
Yeah.
need to word the question, because we don't want to open floor and ceiling.
I think the applicant said that the X-ray goes across, so there was
Yep.
not necessary for it to be on the ceiling and the floor, and we just asked.
Excuse me,
Yep.
that's not correct. The
Nope.
wall, the ceiling will be.
Yeah.
The ceiling was, but not the floor.
And the floor will have a slab, and the earth X is the shield underneath.
Okay,
So we can just change that to, and again, it just will be reiterated what Jerry just said, so just something about what's the thickness of the floor and the ceiling.
Well, I think the
Or-
main point of that question is that adequate? Is that thickness and positioning adequate? So whether, I guess, not really,
So maybe is the thickness of the walls, floor, and ceiling adequate?
yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah, combine the two sentences, like bring it up to the. Because these are the questions that are going to the peer review person, not the applicant.
Well, right, but the, you know, the point is, or what I would anticipate that's gonna happen after tonight is after you arrive at, you know, this memo, you know, it officially goes to the applicant. They will then prepare all of the information that you're asking for. You know, it'll get submitted to the town. You know, we'll all review it, and then the board will decide what parts of that application need peer review and what parts don't. I mean, I think generally, you know, if we're talking, you know, the traffic and just the general site plan itself, you know, probably doesn't need peer review, but, you know, when we talk about the, you know,
Safety.
X-ray and the, you know, the whole sterilization process and the, yeah, that's where, and the acoustics, that's where you're going for peer review.
Okay. Okay, so that really is about, is that adequate? Whatever the planned thickness and positioning
Yeah.
is it adequate?
Yeah.
Any other comments on this section up here?
Are we, just the whole peer review?
I'm sorry?
In peer review,
The peer review section.
the
yep.
whole thing?
Yep, so it goes from page 3 onto the top of page 4.
So the only thing I would add is under 2, letter E. I mean, we talk about a 100-year flood, earthquake. I'd like to include any natural disaster, where there was a direct hit by hurricanes or tornadoes. It was my understanding there was some hazardous material in those chillers that could be of concern.
So we, Anthony, just expand on where it says in the event of extreme weather, you want me to add in,
Natural disaster.
Yeah.
okay.
And then, I have just a question for the applicant. You all had mentioned that you take readings from outside the building, and I was curious, is there, even though it's maybe at a safe level, are you able to detect radiation or whatever it is you're detecting when that electron beam is running, even though it may be at a safe level? Or is it a 0?
So that's, it's state guidance on the shielding and what is allowed, but, what is detected is regulated by the state, and we would be in compliance with that state mandated, regulation.
Okay. So it wouldn't be reasonable to say you could take a baseline from the residential, like Coolidge Street, for example, to see if there was any deviations or differences in that reading?
We wouldn't detect anything from that far beyond the shields. So typically, I mean, we would say that you get more radiation exposure from the sun than you do from anything that would penetrate outside the shield.
Okay.
And if I could add to, just on your concern about the hazardous material in the chiller, we were gonna bring this up and get a little bit more information, but our recent advancement is actually that we're gonna remove that altogether, so the chillers will be operated with water. So Fred, I know this is brand new information to you as well, and we'll go through the proper channels to, you know, to address it, since we've already told you that there was, the intent was to have propylene glycol as part of the circulation system for that, but in an effort to address concerns of the various town boards, we're gonna remove that and just use water instead, protected by you know, from freezing by, you know, the usual measures, heat trace and so on, but all those details seem to be worked out, but just so you guys know, that's one less thing we need to worry about.
Quick question, how tall are the chillers?
About 8 feet.
Okay, so will there still be a meeting with Groundwater to You were scheduled on the 11th?
My guess is we'll need to,
Well, we were scheduled for the 12th,
12th.
next Tuesday. I had given Rich a deadline so that I could review the material, get it out to the committee. He wasn't able to meet that, so there's not going to be a meeting next week for the Groundwater Committee, and I'm waiting to see what details he has to provide. The Groundwater Committee, without that information for the chillers, was able to recommend approval with the information that was submitted. So if there's nothing new that's considered toxic or hazardous that you want to add, there's no reason to go back to the Groundwater Committee. But if you're going to put antifreeze or something in with the water, with the chillers, you'll want to kind of explain that, and then this would be a chance to add anything in the list of toxic or hazardous material that are even on site temporarily to the list. And so if there's anything added to the list, you want to get it on there so that that's what goes to the committee, the Groundwater Committee, and then to the board.
Okay,
And
so
it
it's
would be part
100,
of the permit.
it's 100% water? Okay. All right.
The, I'm sorry, Anthony, are you,
Am I done?
is that,
I'm done.
okay. You don't have to be done, I just didn't want to interrupt your flow. Can I just ask a question? Amy, I think it's more just to you. On, under 1H, I'm assuming you mean performance standards? And is that just, do you want that added in, or?
No, I was just wondering if that's environmental impact, like performance standards or conformance standards, like, I didn't know if that was the same thing. I guess I was just writing that as a note to myself.
Okay,
So I don't know if we need them, but that's what that sentence is saying anyways, right? How do we meet the performance or conformance standards?
well, right, it's asking the applicant what, to provide us information with what they, believe is the environmental impact, of this operation. And then what, how is that addressed or reviewed? And my guess is it's probably gonna be all state and federal information that they're gonna provide us on that, but that's my understanding of what that means.
Okay.
Okay, so you're changing conformance to performance?
I was just gonna take that out,
Oh, okay.
because Amy just said that was more of a question, just to verify that tonight, that's what we meant.
So Amy, that works?
Yeah, if that's what you meant.
I just had a quick question about the chillers. By removing that product and then just doing it with water, does that affect its efficiency, or is it just, it doesn't matter whether you have it in or not, it still will be?
It actually improves the efficiency.
Okay,
Because you're not diluting the water, the glycol's not gonna chill and warm as much as the water will, so you're getting a better transfer of
okay,
temperature with pure water.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, so it sounds like if it's 100% water, does the board think that we can eliminate, under number 2, anything related to hazardous materials? So that would be A, B, and, so impact if they fail, I guess I'd want to know what happens if the chillers fail. Does the whole place, does it overheat? Does anything happen? And you don't have to answer that now, I guess. So before I take it out, I just want to see, are there, aside from just hazardous materials?
The machines would shut down.
Oh, okay, so
If
the whole
If
building.
the water goes out of spec, it's tied into the control system and it would shut down the machines.
So, my understanding of the chillers is it cools down inside the building, is that?
They cool the machines.
They cool the machines, okay, inside the building.
Inside.
And so if the
Inside.
chillers fail, the machines shut down, they don't overheat?
Automatically.
Okay. All right, so then I guess if the board agrees, do we need E? I think that's all the things related to hazardous waste. A, B, and E, is that okay to delete?
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so A, B, and E are coming out.
Okay, any other comments on this section from the board? Or additions, for that matter?
These chillers are the ones that are outside, right?
Yeah.
You have none inside, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
Anything on this side? Okay. Anything?
So, I'm sorry, just,
Oh, sorry.
other than the glycol, there's nothing else in these chillers that is hazardous or a concern, is that right?
Okay. Well, there is no glycol.
That's what I
That's what I
said,
said,
I mean,
other
other than
than-
them taking that out, was
Oh,
there something
yeah.
else?
Okay.
No antifreeze or anything?
That's what that is, yeah.
Oh, that, okay. So there is no antifreeze, but it won't freeze.
It's gonna break.
The
We'll
wa-
use other measures like heat trace and insulation to ensure that we have constant flow. Normally, standard procedure in the Northeast with cold weather would be to add an antifreeze like propylene glycol.
Right.
But due to the concerns on our closeness to wetlands and everything else, we're finding other design methods to eliminate that.
Great.
I just have one more question about that. Since you guys aren't before the design review committee, and typically you might ask about where these might be located, are they in the front of the building, where it'd be visually, or way in the back?
They're tucked around the back end.
So you don't need to do any screening or anything, because nobody would really see them.
They should be screened by the building.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, that's all as it relates. Actually, the next section is really just for our own council, not necessarily this memo. So anything else related to the memo that we want to, that we've since thought of, want to add, remove, concerns? Anything over here?
No.
Okay.
Carrie, can I just ask you a question under, or, to the board, under town
Yeah,
council?
sure.
At number 3, again, I added the note, for your information, that the, concrete plant, how that's being covered. So I didn't know if you still need number 3. The question to town council about, can it be evaluated and denied separately from the site plan approval process? Because
Right.
it's already been, addressed in the groundwater letter and in the order of conditions from the Conservation Commission.
I guess what I want more clarification on is when it's something of this intensity and it's not just, you're gonna be in there for a week or two and you can live with it for a week or two, if the intensity is such that it's a year and we don't really have any details on any sort of noise, dust, debris, impact on the neighborhood, what does that process look like? And maybe I'm not asking it the right way, maybe it's not part of a site plan review, but I would like clarification on how we make sure that we do what we need to do, or any sort of due diligence that we need to do, to make sure that the neighbors are able to live in their homes for the next year without living like that. That's not acceptable to me. So I just want to understand, what's that process where we can make sure that we do everything that we can do to make sure that doesn't just fly by without anybody, all of a sudden we're here and we say, oh, that's already been decided. So that's the heart of that. I don't know if anyone else has anything to say or add to that, or.
I'd agree.
Yeah, I agree.
So maybe, because again, just how it's worded now, I think we just need to change it, because it says, if the groundwater committee recommends against it, but they haven't, they recommended approval of it.
Right.
And then, Concom doesn't approve it, but they have, they've issued their order of conditions. So maybe in number 2, we just add something about,
Well, does this have to be, this isn't really part of the memo, so we could always, do we have to wordsmith it exactly for this? Can we just pull it out and?
well, no, but, what I was thinking of was why we would want to include it in this, is because, town council can also be part of the peer review. So, where the applicant would be, paying for the town council's review. So that's why I wanted to get this straight as far as what we wanted to ask town council.
So maybe it's, what is the process to evaluate a concrete plant of this intensity? And are there, and what conditions are within our purview? Like, what, if not duration, or if not hours, what conditions are in our purview? And maybe it's none, but I just want to understand from our council what that looks like, what that process looks like.
Yeah, so that, again, I think, so I can take out 3, and I'll just reword 2. I mean, this will all go back out to you, hopefully tomorrow, just, based on your changes tonight. And then, you can bless it, and then we'll send it out, so.
So really what you want, town council, is to weigh in on what, if any, regulations you can apply in the site plan approval to the construction portion of this project because of the uniqueness of the concrete plant.
Correct. You're my personal translator.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. Any other comments from the board?
Nope.
Any other comments? Okay. This is a public, oh, sorry.
One thing I was thinking, because we're asking them about the construction part of it, is there anything else town council can weigh into about, once it's constructed, well, it's, to best protect the neighborhood from a use of this capacity?
So I think to the peer, I'd like to hear from the peer
Right.
reviewer, like what their,
Yep, definitely.
based on their recommendations, and then I imagine we'd want to possibly review with council if that's in our purview or not, or what
Okay.
we can do.
I didn't know if they had anything to add, but I guess the peer review would know better.
Okay, this is a public hearing, and if you are here to speak about this particular portion, does anybody have? Yes.
My question is like a concrete plant, basically, going in. That, they didn't apply for that, they applied for something else. So now all of a sudden they've got a concrete plant that they need to build their site. And the ZBA, nothing went forward, now it's in planning, it's already been, but nothing, it's just all of a sudden on your lap.
Right.
And that wasn't, is that light industrial? Is that part of, does that meet our zoning criteria, is my question. It's a separate entity, it's total, and they're saying concrete, it's gonna benefit us with trucks, and it won't, because trucks can't go through our neighborhood, they have to come around the highway, so there's no benefit to our neighborhood, there's only one benefit to them. So we're, gonna have a concrete plant in order to build another plant, and we only approved this, or the ZBA approved this one site, so it just, I have a question on this with the whole, I don't know, is that correct? Is that?
Right, so I have that question as well. So that's what I'm asking for, what the board is asking for, in having that reviewed to make sure that that's not, that there's a process in place.
Okay.
Mhm.
My next question is, there's already, a site there, and there's noise. There's a vent, or I don't know how high it is, but it's loud. Neighbors can hear it. Now I can't, but, if you have your window open in the summertime, you can hear that constant 24/7 vent that's going round and round and round. I don't know what noise it's making, but it's making noise. So now, from the last meeting, there's gonna be 4. So, has anybody measured the noise decibel on that one vent? Does that meet criteria, and multiply that by 4 and then bring it closer to our neighborhood? Is that?
So is this vent on 425 property, or
Yes.
the, oh, okay.
No, it's on.
435
Yes,
is the
So the other
existing.
property?
Their present property.
So I think as it pertains to this application, we would have to look, when we do a review of the noise, I think it would pertain to 425,
So
so.
you can't do it on the site that's already there?
I think for that, you'd have to complain to the zoning enforcement officer. I think that's the right process for that one. The only thing, so for looking at the application before us, we don't have any jurisdiction over 430.
And isn't your job to make sure you control the noise?
So the zoning enforcement officer would be the one to go down
When
and,
you're planning for future building, don't you say, okay, well, what's the noise level?
Yeah, we do have that in our bylaws,
Okay,
for
so how are
sure.
you gonna measure the noise?
So that's a good question. Does Bob have something, if there was a complaint about noise, how do we then go and evaluate that? So somebody calls and says, these vents are really loud, and we believe it's above the 0.5 decibel, whatever it is.
Yeah.
How is that checked, I guess?
The only time that I'm aware of was with that I'm familiar with, was with, on Railroad Drive. And actually, the building inspector just went out and it didn't do any measurement, but just was physically there and said, that's not, appropriate for the neighborhood, that based on what it used to be compared to what it is now. But what you do is, if someone were to, what I believe that Bob would do is if someone were to file a complaint, he would have to go back to whatever the noise, if there was a noise study to begin with that, measured what the sound was at the time and, versus what they can't go over. Then if he was not able to do that, I know our former building inspector would call someone from the state. But I don't know if that's what Bob's process would be. And if that wasn't possible, then, we would have to probably bring in a consultant to assist him.
Now, isn't there, so it was on, my understanding from previous applicants is that there's a baseline reading that's taken.
Mhm.
And then there is a limit in residential areas that's not supposed to go
Yep.
over 5 decibels. And you had mentioned that the applicant's hiring a sound engineer. So I think that would be, one, there should be a baseline reading already before they start operation, so we know where they're at. And then once operation starts, you have that baseline, and we could take, reading, if you had a problem with it, readings could be made in your neighborhood that couldn't exceed that 5 decibels, if I have that correct.
Right, but to answer Carrie's question, though, it's like,
It's a different
who would do that? So, Bob doesn't, he's not an acoustical engineer, so most often he would either, like I said, a former building inspector used to call someone from the state. I don't know if that's still a service that's available or not, but, they would look at the baseline and then they would do their measurements, today. So, so either Bob would, have the ability to call someone from the state, or, we would have to hire a consultant.
So my point being is it's enforceable.
Oh, absolutely.
So-
That's-
Yeah, so in this case, right, so,
Build it and then all of a sudden you're at, 20 decibels, like how do we make sure that they're not, they're, before it's even built, that.
right, no, so as part of our.
What we're doing, is that
Yep.
what you're planning on?
Yes, so as part of this whole, our list of questions, included in that is an evaluation of noise, and to have an engineer come in and evaluate, do that kind of testing in advance to make sure that, it's within our performance standards. So that's all part of what we'll evaluate for this plan. But for any existing properties, we don't have control over that. You would just have to send a written email to Bob. I guess an email will be written by default, but send a message to Bob. He likes it in writing, and then, he would have to investigate the other property for that noise.
And I just looked up just to see what the language was in the performance standard. So it's at the measurement is taken at the property line of the facility, and then that's where it's measured from then on,
Okay.
is at the property line.
Okay. Okay. Anything else? Yes.
Leslie Shaw, 34 Coolidge Circle, where we have abutters to the property. And my concern is, under our bylaws, we have light manufacturing, and it says the property, you should be free from, heat, vibration, noise, electromagnetic radiation. And I know they're building the walls so thick, but how are we gonna be guaranteed that's not leaking? I've had cancer. That scares the hell out of me, okay? I don't wanna find out later that I'm affected by that. And that's in the bylaws, so I don't understand why this is happening.
So,
We live really close, and our property does go behind the train tracks. And I know I wasn't not able to come to the last meeting, and Jim is out of town, And someone made a comment that, who cares, you can't build on that property. Doesn't matter, it's our property. We don't have to tell anybody what we're doing with it, we own it. So this is disturbing, because we just went through the Anza problem, and nobody followed up, and it happened again. So how can I be guaranteed, who's gonna be checking if there's radiation leaks? Who's gonna check if there's water in the chillers? Who's gonna if there's anything, my girlfriend wrote, is there gonna be any hazardous material coming out of the stack emissions? Who's gonna be checking that? I mean, he was told to stop, but nobody checked on it, and it happened again. So you can't,
Yeah.
we're not very confident in this whole thing. Well, at least I'm not.
So it sounds like two questions there. One, within this list of questions and comments, we've asked, what are the regulations? What's the reporting mechanism? Basically, what are the safeguards? Who checks that? I understand what you're saying, though. Who ultimately checks that? Yeah. So that's good for us to keep in mind as we build conditions, because certainly we can be thinking about that. What does that look like? What does that reporting look like, to make sure that it's not 10 years later we wonder, oh, we forgot to check, right? So that's definitely in my mind, for sure. Regarding the bylaws itself, so.
37, I think, is what you're looking for, Carrie.
Yep, so we had, let's see.
You want me to answer that part?
Yes, hold on, I'm just reading for a quick
Okay.
second.
I prefer you. Thank you.
Yes, you do prefer, okay.
No, she said she preferred you.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, so when I read this, it looks like that whole first part is, it's supposed to be free from neighborhood disturbing agents such as odors, gas, fumes, smoke, cinders, refuse matter, electromagnetic radiation, heat, vibration, or noise. I then consider the next piece to be provided operations are located entirely within the enclosed building. This is a question we asked town council, and town council said, if you could remind me what they said on that.
Well, basically that it's not that it's prohibited, that list is of, the substantially noiseless, inoffensive motor power, so forth. It's not that it's prohibited, that it has to be located entirely within an enclosed building.
So can we actually talk to them a little bit more, but can we add this as something to talk to them about? Because I do read this, that the conditions before, so up through the semicolon is a statement, and after the semicolon is a statement. And I read that as a set of conditions to be met, A, then a set of conditions to be met, B. So I wonder if I could, excuse me, I'm just gonna see if I can find their, I know they sent us a note.
You looking for the email from town council?
Yep, no, I have it.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm not sure he actually answered, or she, is it he?
Yep. Yes, in this particular case, yes.
So does the board have any thoughts on this? You also read you read town council's email. Are there any?
I also think we're asking them too, under light manufacturing use, to provide data and facts that supports that, right, that statement?
Could you say that again? Maybe I didn't hear you.
Well, we're asking in the memo, right, to provide data and facts that it supports the criteria, but yeah, I don't know. Because I did ask a different lawyer, and they read it differently than town council, so it's tricky.
So can we, does the board want additional clarification on how this statement is read, or?
Sure, but I don't know who we.
Yeah, I mean, if
Would
we're
we
going back to
ask?
the same attorney, we're probably gonna get the same.
Well, it's just, I don't read it as absolutely prohibiting.
I mean, you can't keep asking someone until you like their
Well, no, I'm
answer.
just
Yeah.
saying that, no, because I think we've heard.
It's our legal
we've heard
counsel.
differing opinions on this.
I mean, from who? I mean, you asked you asked the building inspector, and he gave you his interpretation, and then,
Let's ask an English teacher.
and then you asked the, town council to either, to review Bob's
I
interpretation.
guess I'm curious of the semicolon. Like, what does that mean? Does it all conditions before the semicolon must be met and all conditions after must be met? Or does that make it so, as long as you have it inside, you can do whatever you want? As long as you have it inside, you don't need to meet any other of those conditions? Is that
Well,
what that's
It's not
saying?
that it's not that you meet them, you have to meet the performance standards, which are a different section of the bylaw. So this is what defines what's allowed or not allowed. These are the definition of, this whole section is the definitions of what's allowed or what's not allowed in the various zoning districts. So his interpretation, I mean, staff's interpretation and town council's interpretation is that, it's an industrial use. Light manufacturing is allowed in Northborough in the industrial district. And light manufacturing includes fabrication, processing, packaging, assembling operations, employing electric or other substantially noiseless, inoffensive motor, utilizing hand labor, and then free from all these neighborhood disturbing agents, provided that it's all inside.
So you could have odors, gas, fumes, smoke, cinders, and radiation as long as it's inside? So you can do whatever you want as long as.
Yeah, I mean,
that's what-
those are natural byproducts of light manufacturing.
Okay, so I guess
And then
maybe.
you go into your, then you have your performance standards in a different section that, then industry, anything in the industrial district has to meet those performance standards.
Okay, so I guess I would just want to understand, do the conditions before the semicolon have to be met? Like, if it's free from electromagnetic radiation, how is that allowed if there's electromagnetic radiation? I guess is what the question is.
In the neighborhood area is the way I read that. So it's not disturbing the neighborhood, so they're gonna be measuring it,
Yeah,
within the acceptable realm of the state of Massachusetts. As long as it doesn't, noise or odors or gases aren't escaping into the neighborhood residential. That's where your concern comes in, is how are we measuring that, and how would that be down the line?
Who knows when it's happening?
And so,
So just to
It says
answer
it's
one
in
of
the
your
bylaws.
questions, so we're asking for a peer review on this because we're not experts, right?
Right.
So we're asking someone who's experienced in this to help educate us to make the conditions, right? So one of them is, to answer your question, how do you make sure there's a checks and balances so it doesn't happen again, what happened there before with Santos? So you're saying radiation monitoring inside and outside, the cell, how is it recorded, how is it reported, how often, to whom, what the level, and when is there a problem, right? So at that point, someone's gonna come back and tell us, this is, how often, so this is what I would ask for the applicant. And then you can make requests of the applicant to report it either yearly or every 6 months or every month or whatever. And then they report it to the town, and what the town does with it is beyond us, right? I mean, that's like an administration thing. If the town gets a report and doesn't look at it, I'm sure they would, but if they didn't, then that would be an administration thing. That's not us. But what we're trying to do is put things in place that either monthly or whatever the peer says on a normal basis with this type of building, you should have this reported to your town, I'm assuming engineer, who would take the report, look at it, evaluate it, and see, the radiation's contained, it's not getting out, I mean, you might want to ask who tests it. I mean, are they testing it, or is it someone independent testing it?
Is there some type of machine or tool that can be outside the building that you could have a reading done.
Right, but that's why we're asking a peer person,
Right.
other than this company, to say, well, this is what I would recommend if this building was being built in my community or something. That's, I'm assuming that the peer review is going to answer those
Yes,
questions, correct?
yep, and the
Yeah.
peer review would, assist the board in what condition should be placed on the property. But just to, I'm not an English teacher, but, if you just go into, applying the same logic to number 2, under industrial uses, okay? So in the industrial district, we allow light manufacturing, that's what's described in number 1. And then in number 2, we allow research and development. And then it goes on to talk about, what research and development is. Natural, physical, social sciences, including but not limited to research and development of renewable alternative energy, blah, blah, blah. Objective of creating end products, and, fabrication, light manufacturing, and then the same thing, provided such operations are free from neighborhood disturbing, so that same clause is used in both. So you can do all of that, but you can't, have disturbing
The neighborhood.
agents in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And then in order to say, to verify that you don't have, neighborhood disturbing agents, then that's where, then the performance standards.
But it says, it's a comma, not a semicolon. In number 2.
Like I said, I'm not an English major. That's how we did it in 2009. And both of these were, reworked when we did the, the whole rezoning study. And then we also added some language into research and development for green communities.
Can I just make a recommendation, because I think you made a valid point, is on this peer application for number 4, could we add that question, is there a device to monitor outside the property, outside the building? I really don't know how the monitoring is actually done. Maybe you guys know, but I don't know how it's done.
What page, Michelle, I'm sorry?
On your peer review application, under number 4, where you're talking about how is the radiation monitored inside and outside the cell, could we ask the person who does the peer, is there a device that these properties have where it can be placed outside the building to monitor it?
If I understand correctly, that's something that the state really regulates, is that, so you guys are tested at least annually and get all sorts of certifications that you have to comply with, that really the state is handling.
The state sets the standards and we meet the standards.
And you have to submit your data to the state regularly, every so often, to meet their licensure compliance. They have, I think you guys have like 17 licenses.
I'm sorry, yeah, they have regulations that we have to meet and comply with.
Right.
And I'll just add to it, I work there every day.
Mhm.
So, it's incumbent upon me to make sure that my buildings and my equipment is safe for myself as well as the people that work for me. And
Mhm.
we do take, safety very seriously at Star, so this is nothing that we take lightly, and again, we're invested because we're there at the plant every day, working, and we want to save the value for
Mhm.
ourselves as well as the community, so.
Does the state mandate what is happening outside the building, the plant facility as well? Because they do all their testing and measurement as well there, correct? Yeah,
Correct, yeah.
okay.
So is outside and inside reflect, you're curious about outside?
Well, yeah, that's what the neighbor asked. How do you know that it's not, the radiation isn't going outside, and how is it monitored?
I thought we had that in here.
Well, we do have it in here, but her question was, is there a device that monitors it outside?
So you have under peer review, under 1G, what risks do we need to be aware of? What's the safe radius from the structure? Health risks, explosion risks, leakage risks.
I mean, the peer review, they may come back with, there is no device, so then you go, okay, there is. Or yes, this is a common device, but it's just a question that we can go back to the
Yeah.
neighbors when they ask, and,
I
Because,
thought you guys said there was a device, that when you're powering up the building, you start with low levels and you test it.
So there is not typically a permanent device to the exterior of the building that's continually detecting. What we do is we prove out the shielding. So once we, again, going back to the concrete manufacturing plant on site, we are determining the quality of the concrete as we build the shield to ensure that it's going to be correct. So when it's completed, that's correct. We'll fire up the machine at various levels, and we will take a perimeter reading of the shield containment. And once that's shown to be appropriate according to state regulations, it's not gonna change.
So that is a machine you use where you can test
It's a,
the levels?
A guide counter.
Yep,
Yep.
so you test inside and outside?
We test outside the perimeter.
And that's only done one time.
Again, I would have to look at the regulations to find out, what that requirement is.
I think, would it be possible to have an instead, I'd like to just understand what are the reporting, regulations? Is it something that needs to be done on a annual basis or some regular basis? Then I'd like to also understand who is it reported to and who's monitoring it beyond just the applicant, whether it's the town or the state, and what mechanisms are in place to ensure that they're within compliancy.
All right, so we have radiation monitoring inside and outside the cell. How will it be recorded and reported? How often and to whom?
Okay.
What's the recording and reporting schedule? Did
That's
that
it.
satisfy your?
Yep.
And then we also have review compliance with state and federal regulations. In the ones listed here, I don't know, maybe whoever the peer reviewer is would have different, but this doesn't have to be a list that's just, only contains these two items. It could be whoever is appropriate at the state and federal level. It's not limited to 1 and 2. So I don't know if we need to put
Well, on that one, Carrie, on E, I'm thinking that right here with the applicant, we could ask them.
Oh, okay, great.
Who does review their compliance
Is it?
with state and federal regulations? So is it the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the
The
EPA?
state of Massachusetts is a unit state, so the state handles the regulations, and it's the Health and Human Services, Radiation Safety Division within the state of Massachusetts.
Great.
So I do have a quick question, I think, that because this is a new facility and there are none of these existing in the United States, how does the regulation then accommodate for something that they don't yet have in operation?
So there is one in New Jersey that is being used for mail. There are X-rays, again, that are of a small nature used in airports,
Right.
dentists and hospitals. But radiation is radiation.
Mm-hmm.
So again, it's the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Office of Health and Human Services, Department of Public Health, Bureau of Environmental Health, Radiation Control Program.
Okay, so that covers this facility.
And again, it's covering radiation.
Okay. I just
So
wasn't
we
sure.
have the same effect.
Okay, and
Okay.
and the building structure and everything is all encompassed under that, okay.
Okay, so we're changing E, and EPA is not involved? EPA does not?
Not with radiation.
Okay, so Kathy, do you have that?
Yep,
Or we
I'll
can
get,
clarify
yeah,
it.
I can look up the whole, but it's the Executive Office of Health and Human Services.
Okay,
And then, but Carrie, you, before we started talking about that, you had, and I didn't catch it, the radiation, you want to add a question?
no, it's already in there. Anthony had asked about it, and it was actually 4, page 4, number 4.
Oh,
It was
okay.
just about recording and reporting.
Okay,
And it was inside, addressed inside and outside.
okay.
And it sounds like that is the case anyway. And, let's see. The device question, is that something you still have, or?
Yeah, I think it's worth asking. And
Okay.
that would be under.
Oh, I guess how would it be recorded, maybe?
Yeah, could be under number 4. right here on number 4.
So where it already says, Michelle, how will it be recorded?
Yeah, is there a device to monitor outside the building?
And I mean, I think, like we did in previous years, like in the 1990 STARS decision, we could add a condition if we approve it that would say an annual outside and inside test to be submitted to, you know, the planning board and the fire department or the building inspector.
Excuse me, could you do it more than once a year?
Yeah, we could talk about it, yeah.
Yeah, we've asked them what they suggest, what they peer
But we
recommend.
can also decide too.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So basically, so that, just to clarify what we're doing is, so we're asking, because we don't know a lot of these answers, we're asking for a peer review so that they can look at, so we've listed about 4 pages worth of questions that we've gone through. I think you have a copy, I don't know, yeah, okay. So, this would be something that we would have a peer help us with too, to say, all right, maybe you should, the regulations are actually X times a year, and if we need to do certain conditions, then we can keep that in mind too, so
I
it's,
just wanted to make a note, I hate to drop the cancer card, and it just runs in our family, and, I just have to say it because. it
No,
does scare
absolutely.
me. I mean, I'm clean right now, but I don't want something like this to affect me.
no, absolutely.
So it's not to take advantage, because it is, but it is a concern of mine.
Yes,
Real concern.
yes, absolutely, thank you. Okay, any other comments? Henry?
My name's Henry Spillane, 72 Crestwood Drive, to the chair. I want to ask how often, they wear radiation badges, and how often do they check their badges? Second question is, the nuclear industry has found that radiation will degrade concrete, and just checking it when you first pour it isn't sufficient, in my humble opinion. It should be checked periodically. And the other thing I want to ask, you have a backup generator. If your cooler, the power goes out, your cooler goes off, don't you have to bring that equipment down, cool it down? You just can't shut it off? You have a backup generator. That's through the chairperson, please.
Okay, so we have in our questions, let's see,
Saw that.
okay, questions about the concrete.
It was F.
Okay, so the board has asked, what is the degradation of concrete over time? What's the life expectancy of concrete under these conditions? How often does it need to be inspected, replaced? What type of reporting records should be required? Does the concrete need to be coated? Does it require lead bricks? That's the proper maintenance protocol for the concrete. You obviously don't have to answer those questions now. Is there any insight on any of that in terms of life expectancy of concrete, or?
Well, I think, in our peer review, that's a very good thing.
Okay.
to answer.
Okay.
In terms of, we have shields that have been in service for many years, and we check them annually.
Okay.
And we've not had any issues. It's part of the quality of concrete. That, again, bring that up with the concrete plant, that we check on the density, check on the water level, make sure that it's, you know, sound concrete to start with. There's no voids, no imperfections in it, you know, prevent any kind of degradation. I don't have any, data in front of me right now to say, here's the lifespan of concrete, but it's a, I'll go back to, I'm sorry, that you were at, but again, it's a great question to be answered in the peer review.
Okay, so I think that would just be, you know, an X-ray, it's at that power, it's constantly hitting it. At what point does it, you know, have that fault line, or, you know, something? So I guess that's reflected in this question. So I don't think we asked about a backup generator. I think we asked about backup plans. Are there any backup generators?
We
Or do-
intend to install a backup generator for life support systems, and for now our chill water system to keep the, lines heated during the winter instead of using glycol.
Okay, and then for radiation badges, we didn't ask anything really about that. I guess Is that something, just like an internal safety protocol type thing for employees that you do, just out of curiosity?
That's right, it's tested monthly, so, and again, that's part of the state regulations.
Okay, so just part of general compliance with state regulations is what it fall, okay.
And, sorry, Kathy, so you had mentioned the NRC, so state of Massachusetts, again, is an agreement state, that means it exceeds the requirements of the NRC.
Thank you.
I think the other question was asked is, if you do lose power and the chiller's shut down prior to the equipment being cooled off, would there be any concern?
Okay, so does that,
Because the minute you turn off the power, the electricity, the machines stop.
And that is,
Just stop.
stop and,
And there is, and, you know, you have to expect that there could be a power outage.
sure, sure.
And so they're designed that way. When the power's off, or if you turn the switch off, no radiation, there's no residual radiation, there's no, any other issues.
And they instantly cool down, or? is it-
Well, they're contained inside a room, they're inside the shield. And, you know, there will be some heat generated from, but it's inside the shield.
okay. Anything else? Okay. Anything else from the applicants or the board or staff, anything else?
No, so what I'll just do is, you know, is make the changes and, get that out to you, you know, tomorrow, Thursday by the latest. And, you know, just obviously, you know, have you review it and then, you know, we'll issue it to the company
Okay,
and go from there.
so in terms of continuing, what makes sense timeline-wise? Is this something we need to have everybody come back for right away, or?
Well, I actually think it's probably more appropriate to ask them, like, you know, now that they've seen this, you know, how long will it take? I think you had mentioned in the beginning, Carrie, and I think Steve, you had too, that, you know, you've been in Norwich, you've been putting some of this together. So you know, to ask them how long, you know, they need in order to put this material together, because then it needs to be, you know, before we can go out for a peer review, you know, we need to have the material.
Okay, so
Oh.
this letter hasn't changed a whole lot. I think we actually removed some things. I don't think we added, I don't know if it's hard for you to keep track. I think you have a previous copy. So based on what's almost what was originally sent, what does timing look like from your perspective?
My thought is we can do it one of two ways, perhaps, is, some of this information is readily available. We can start to populate the responses, but other matters have a longer lead time, like this is the acoustic engineer and the traffic study. We did solicit for quotes from qualified experts for conducting those, so we've already started that process. But those would, which may know better than I would, how long that might take, because it's a common, a lot of those professionals are busy, but we're trying to get them, you know, to be as responsive. So we could either start to, like, for your next meeting, see where we are, provide a partial response, and then the rest to follow, or you could just wait. I don't know what your schedule is. If we went like 2 meetings out, if there's a likelihood we'll have more of it on that date.
Well, I'll tell you what's coming up. November 19th, December 3rd, and December 17th.
The 17th is the meeting I have the problem.
Oh,
with-
okay,
the conflict with.
okay. Perhaps not the 17th, but around that time. So November 19th, December 3rd, and then a second date in December. We would actually have to set the date, though, so we couldn't just say.
Yeah, so, yeah, if you wanted to go, I mean, tonight, if, you know, December 3rd didn't work, you want to go out. I mean, by the end of the night, I'd like to know if you're going to meet a second time in December anyways, just so we can put it on the schedule. But
And I think
I have a conflict on.
If for some reason they said the 3rd and weren't ready, they could always ask in writing to continue the hearing
Yeah.
beyond that. Okay.
How far in advance would you guys want the responses to those comments to be supported? I think that's, yeah, if you would need a couple weeks to review it, I think that plays into what meeting we can be prepared.
Okay, with,
That makes sense.
any thoughts on that for lead time?
I mean, a couple weeks, staff-wise, makes sense for
Yeah.
us, but I, you know,
Probably more for staff for a couple weeks than for us.
so does that put you more into the second meeting in December?
I think so. Is there a downside to aiming for the third, and if, it's approaching the deadline?
No, you could send a request to continue in writing, and we can continue it if need be. So if you want to shoot,
'Cause
Early.
I mean, the board would be meeting anyways, I'm assuming.
Yep.
You know, so I mean, you would have other business that night, so,
Yeah.
yeah, you would just need to send us something in writing asking to be continued to the next meeting.
Sure, right, and we'll aim to submit the materials 2 weeks prior to that.
Yeah.
And if something comes up, we'll
okay, so then the December 3rd meeting, we will then look to finalize what we need for the remaining peer review portion. Okay, so that meeting, we will continue the hearing to December 3rd at 7 o'clock. Does that work? Okay. And if you need to continue, you just need to notify us in writing. By then, we should actually know the second date that month. And we can probably share that with you when we have it, if you don't, was that okay to share?
Yeah, yep, and like I said, I mean, hopefully by the end of tonight, we can.
Yes, we'll know.
Just so I can, if anyone is looking to, any other applicant is looking to file, I need to tell them, because right now, they would be filing for that meeting in December, that second meeting in December.
Okay. Wait, what would be filing the second meeting?
No, if someone were, like, when when an applicant comes to us, we tell them that they need to file basically a month in advance.
Oh, okay, got it.
So that November date is soon approaching to say, I need it, a month in advance. So if you pick December 18th for the meeting, I need it in advance of, a month of December 18th, or the 19th, if you're gonna pick something that week.
Okay.
Do you want to make a motion?
Sure.
Okay. I'll make a motion that this hearing is continued with the applicant until December 3rd
At 7 o'clock.
at 7 PM.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Okay,
Thank
so
you.
the hearing's continued to December 3rd. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys.
What else do we have? Okay.
Is the meeting December 17th or December 19th?
We're gonna have to figure out that second December meeting.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, have a good night. Okay, next on the agenda, let's see. Do we have any minutes?
No, I'm sorry, you don't.
That's okay. All right, so no minutes. Any master plan update?
Actually, today, there's just a little bit of an update. Today, I have the final version that's going to, the revised final version, that's going to go out to the subcommittee or the steering committee. And so we're looking at a November, November 13th steering committee meeting. And then we're looking at a December 10th presentation. So that would be the presentation, from the steering committee, to the public, and then we would also, advertise the planning board's public hearing. So this was all, the reason why you're finding out about it just now is because we're just going, kind of week by week with our final revisions. So those, I was able, I did get the final revision tonight. So,
Okay.
so that's what we're looking at, is that the steering committee would be, November 13th, and the public presentation would be December 10th. And so after the steering committee, we're gonna give the steering committee, as we have done in the past, it's following the same process. Steering committee will have the document for about a week. they'll review it, and then we'll provide it to the planning board in the event that there's any changes that the steering committee is going to make. And then you'll have the document, well in advance of December 10th.
Okay, and that's the public presentation, planning board hearing.
Yes, on the 10th, December 10th.
Great.
So we'll get that tomorrow, probably? The
Yeah,
steering
yeah,
committee?
it'll go out tomorrow, Amy.
Okay.
Okay, anything else from master plan steering committee members? Okay. Any A&Rs, lot releases, bonds?
No,
I just wanted to
nope,
talk
nope.
about A&R for a second, because we went to a class a couple weeks ago with CP. We went to one of the classes, and A&Rs came up again, and I asked for the second or third time, because they talk about A&Rs that have to come in front of the board, and it has to be a public meeting where we vote on it as a whole board. And I raised my hand and I asked, because I know every time we sign it as an individual. And I said, that's how we've been doing it for 30 years in town. And the lawyer said, well, that's what I hear, but that's wrong. And I've asked 3 times now at 3 different classes, and they say that all A&Rs have to be voted on by a majority of the board. It can't just be one person signing it.
Because we've had this conversation
I know.
before, and that's not how we've been advised by town council. And so, again, the process that's been, and it was followed way before I was here, is the registry of deeds sends out, you sign it every year, sends out a form, and right on the form, it asks if one individual or all signatures are required for A&Rs. And so this board has historically always said that any individual can sign. So you all sign the form, and then the registry looks at that form when a plan comes in, because plans have been rejected, not in our town. But the registry has rejected plans if they can't read someone's signature, or if the file, and again, Millie, I need your signature. I should have done that today. I have to get your signature on file.
Oh, you should have done that.
I know. So I'll do that form.
Well, from what I hear is
So,
like one person can sign it, but the whole board has to vote. That's,
I don't know what to tell you, Amy. There's so many communities in Massachusetts that the planning board never even sees the A&R, because it's a staff member that's been.
every meeting, even all the other towns that were there were like, oh yeah, it has to be a majority of the board, and I have it, I'll find the paperwork, but I've asked 3 different times, and every single class, they are adamant it has to be a majority of the board, and every other town there is adamant that it's a majority.
And our
of the
legal
board.
counsel is adamant that you don't have to,
The other
So-
and that's how we've done it.
Every
Is it
town,
town to
it was
town or
Burlington,
state?
Mass.
She's saying it's state,
the
and we're
woman.
saying it's town to town?
I don't know what she's saying.
Me?
But
Okay,
Yeah.
so how do we,
there's no issue with how you're doing it. I don't know, I know Amy doesn't like my answer, and I don't know what
Well, I just
you
asked
wanna
in the
do.
class, because they always talk about it. And I'm like,
I
well, that's not what we're told. But every time and it's a lawyer that's teaching the class.
Yeah, and as a lawyer,
well,
this.
can we decide to do a different process if we wanted to?
Yeah.
Like, if we wanted to vote on it, could we vote on it?
You can do
Establish
that.
it as a,
It's not necessary,
Is
it's
the
extra
form-
steps, but
Is the form from the registry a matter of signature? Is it just saying only one?
yes, the form is divided up into 2. They send it to every community in Massachusetts. So it comes from every registry, and so you sign, it verifies who's on the board, and so it's your name, your signature, and your term. And then the second part of the form is what's required to sign an A&R.
Okay,
And so, so you have to fill out that it's either individual or a majority of the board.
okay, so that's forms a matter of signature, but if we wanted to change our manner of voting, do we have to do anything in the rules and regulations, or can we just vote on it if we wanted to vote on it?
No, if you want to, if you want if you want to vote on an A&R, you're free to do that.
So how does,
You're just not required to do it.
okay, what is the board's response to, do we want to vote on A&Rs and just have a signature, or, Amy, it sounds like you do.
Yeah, I do, because I've had 3 different lawyers tell me that we're supposed to be doing it. And I know our town council, I don't know if we have that in writing where they said, I know that one person could sign it, but they said it has to be a majority of the board approving it.
Yep, every time you bring it up, Amy, I verify
I
it
know.
with town council,
And-
but
Okay, any,
So
Michelle?
if the board would vote on it, so typically how the process is Kathy gives us an A and R,
Right.
explains on it. So if the board would vote on it, are you asking for the applicant to come before you each
No.
time? No.
No, we just see the drawing, like, we should all be looking at it and, yeah, and vote on it.
So to limit any impact, could we just, I know it's on that nice paper, can we just all look at one drawing and we all look at it and agree? Is that a proper,
yeah, again,
would that,
Timeframe that has to be signed by.
is it all
Right,
within the
that's-
same?
then and that's another part of the reason why it doesn't have to go, thank you, that it doesn't have to go before the board is because there's a time frame. By state law, there's 21 days. So a lot of boards don't meet, within, if an A&R is submitted and they don't have a meeting within, 21 days. So that by default, they automatically get signed by the town clerk's office. And that's something that you want to avoid, because what we do is we reject a lot of A&Rs before they ever get to you, because they're not done properly, they don't have the right information, they don't meet the zoning, so I mean, what you see is the final product. Sometimes they come in perfect, and that's great, and then other times, we have to send them back to the, engineer for revisions, so.
Is there harm in voting on an A&R, and then in the instance where for some reason we don't meet and don't have the timeline, we're able to not vote on? I mean, I don't want to have a process that's not consistent, so I just want to make sure we think about that.
Would it have to be signed in a meeting?
No, well, Amy's saying that it does,
Oh,
but,
Like it's a vote.
No, it just
But
had
she
to be
said-
voted on at the meeting, it doesn't.
Voted on, okay.
So we're saying, do we just, as a matter of our operations, do we want to vote on A&Rs, even though it's not required? Do we want to take the extra step to, even though our town council says it's not required, do we want to take the extra step to take a look? I mean, obviously, in the case of an A&R, it sounds like we'll just be signing it for the most part, but if it's in the public, and if anyone wants to talk about it or ask a question, they could.
What is the benefit of signing it versus what we're doing now?
I guess I would ask what's the benefit of the approval, because an A and R means approval not required.
Right, that's what I'm
Right,
asking.
it's just that's the nature of an A and R, you don't have to have
Well,
board's
that's
approval.
because they fully vet it, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
so,
I'll find the paperwork and maybe we'll talk about the next meeting.
Okay.
I'm on
Yeah,
yeah,
the government website now.
Okay.
doing
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
So we can maybe add that to the agenda for next time.
All right, so, and no lot releases or bonds.
no.
Subcommittee updates. Millie, did you have CPC? I want to start with you. because
not
I-
yet.
Oh,
It's
darn it.
coming up.
Million
Okay.
that CPC.
Coming up,
The 14th
yeah.
is, the applications we do on the 1st.
Yeah,
The first meeting will be on the 14th, November 14th.
so excited.
And then the hearing will be scheduled for December 5th.
Okay, CMRPC, there is actually a solar workshop on the 14th this month, and I will be attending that. I think the invite is extended if anyone else wants to join. Kathy, you said you couldn't make it.
Yeah, I have
That's okay.
CPC, yeah.
Where's
that's
that
right.
located?
That is in, geez, is it,
Oh, I know, is it at the
Blackstone Valley?
office, or,
A week from Thursday.
I know, but we can't remember
Oh, it's
where
during the day?
it
no,
is. No, it's at night.
It's at night,
Oh,
yep.
Which one's that?
I can resend that,
Okay.
Carrie.
Saw that.
I can't remember where it was.
Okay, so so that'll be great. The solar workshop will be nice to attend. And other than that, nothing there. That's the quarterly meeting for that. Anything from open space? Is that Anthony?
Yeah, we met last, I think it was Monday. It was a kickoff to the open space and recreation plan. I don't know if is that what we call it? Okay.
Yep, that's the official.
It's a long-term plan. It's kind of almost like this mini master plan for open space. Trish Settles came in to talk about how the process, and so the first thing is developing a survey, which will go to the public. generating interest, getting people involved to participate in their concerns for the town and getting feedback and collecting that. And so that's kind of where they are in the process. And if I remember correctly, this is a 9-month, is it 12-month, 9 or 12-month?
9 to 12. But you're right. I mean, we're hoping we can do it in 9, but.
So that's what was the kickoff for that. There's a parcel on Green Street, 9.8 acres, that's being donated by a family. The Howard Street property, I forget the address, 420?
615.
615.
615.
Which we looked at and was approved for purchase, the back lot, which abuts
Mount Pisgah?
Mount Pisgah. So we're just waiting for the purchase and sale for that to close.
And we moved to we have the purchase and sale drafted, which you just came in like after the meeting.
Okay.
But the title search is next, so that's what we're
Okay.
doing now.
CPA, so John had mentioned the CPA had $800,000, and the Hudson Street property will take roughly half of that. It was I think $390,000. Assabet Park, they're looking to do a $500,000 upgrade to become ADA compliant. And so I guess, I'm not certain where, is that
Yes, they're applying for part of the funding from the CPC.
Okay, so that. And then there was just, they were looking for approval for $60,000, which I believe comes out of, approved by Concom, and I think some money comes out of CPA to manage the lakes, or I guess the great ponds in town. And so there's some question about, are we handling the ponds the best way by killing all the vegetation? I guess Dan Clark?
Yes, yep.
He's an expert in this stuff, wanted to go, and I think he's talking at Concom.
He did.
Tonight, to express his concerns about just how we're going about it, and is killing all the vegetation, even if it's native vegetation, the right thing to do. So I don't know the outcome of that, but.
So he was Mia McDonald, the conservation agent. Dan came, Dan's, like Anthony said, he's a wildlife biologist, and he works for the state, and he's on our open space committee. And so he did come to the Conservation Commission meeting on Monday, and gave them a lot of information, and also concurred with what they were doing, and actually also encouraged them to treat every year as opposed to every 3 years. So they're gonna be modifying their application.
What a good resource to have on the
Yeah.
board.
Dan's great, yeah. Yeah, he's got a great background.
And then the last thing we did is we voted to support adding another $400,000 to CPA funds for, I guess it's for open space.
Yep.
That's it.
A lot of work. Anything from groundwater?
Nope, we didn't meet. And it sounds like we're not meeting next week.
Well, we met in October,
Haven't we met since then?
the planning board did, but we haven't met since your last meeting. And we're not scheduled to meet in November because the
Right.
applicant's not ready.
Yep.
The next meeting would be December 10th if there's an application that comes before them, or they decide they have some information they want to provide for this project.
Okay. And design review?
We had the Lexus dealership, which is located on Route 9, come before us. They're coming back again. I think in another week. They're making slight alterations to their building in the front and also in where they have their service area. And similar to what we saw having at the Honda dealership next door. So it's moving along nicely. A lot of good feedback.
Okay, so we got an application in tonight for a design review. So
Yep, they came in today.
what is the membership like right now? Do we have,
We have 4 members.
okay. So
We have 2 architects, 1 landscape architect, and myself and the planning board.
Okay.
To have 1 open seat.
Okay. So have we been advertising this?
Yep, I've been advertising for, ever since, Mr. Abu, resigned, which was just about a year ago.
Okay, so is this our only application so
This is
far?
the only application that's come in so far.
So what is the best way to do, do we have an interview? Do we ask for additional applications? What, I guess as chair,
Well, who's in charge of appointing to
The planning board.
The planning board.
The planning board is the appointing authority.
Okay,
so we have our policy now.
right. We have
I
a
think-
policy. Is our meeting on the 14th next week?
Yes, yeah,
On the
on,
14th.
yeah, so it's on Thursday instead of Friday, yeah.
I guess I would recommend to the board, if they wanted this applicant if they feel like the applicant is qualified and wanted to consider the applicant to be on the board, since it's the only one that we've received, then we could, I don't know if the policy says that we could vote it on tonight, or if they want to interview next week when we meet on the 14th.
So I think we set it up with an interview process in our new policy.
Okay?
So that we would advertise it, and then it would be posted in our agenda that we're interviewing,
Okay,
so that the public would know. And then we would conduct a public interview.
okay.
So that's something I guess we would.
So our
have to-
next meeting, our next planning board meeting is November
19.
19th. And as part of the process, do we have the applicants interviewed by the design review committee?
No, I think you would represent them as the chair.
Okay, because if that's the case, that applicant could come before us next week, but if that's not the case, then I guess this applicant would come before us on the 19th.
But then of course, it's public, so anyone from design review could come in.
Exactly, so I'll let them know. Yep,
I just want to make sure we meet our new policy. This is the first run with it. So, I think I have the final version. Did we ever get a final version of this policy?
I can't answer that definitively. If I
That's
sent
okay.
one out
So
or
if
not,
for some reason
Karen, but
I've
I
stated
will.
something that is not actually reflected in the policy, then we can obviously revise it. But based on the last version I have, so the public can submit feedback 48 hours prior to the date of the scheduled interviews. So that's something that people can do as well. We'll post it in our agenda and make sure that obviously will take place as part of a public meeting. I don't think there were any other requirements. Does anybody see any requirements in our new policy that I'm missing? And then if in that time you get other candidates, then we could schedule that the same evening.
So you want to go ahead and schedule an interview for the 19th,
Does that work?
November 19th?
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
so Kathy, if you
We'll just
would,
do that at the beginning of the
Yeah.
meeting.
Sure.
I mean, I don't know if you'd get any other candidates, but if another candidate came on, you would just automatically put them on the 19th,
Okay.
right?
Okay. Okay. Anything else, design review?
No, we're still waiting on the multifamily bylaws, and hopefully that will come along. And other than that, we're just working with Lexus on Route 9.
Okay. If you, Kathy, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you wouldn't mind just giving like a, 30-second overview, or longer if you want, of just the MVP workshop that we had last week. I thought that was really neat. I know it's not really through the planning, but it was just kind of a really neat thing.
So Carrie and I and Fred participated in a day-long workshop that the Department of Public Works is coordinating as part of the what's called the MVP, Municipal Vulnerability Program? Preparedness Program. Preparedness, thank you.
Yep.
Jason participated also. And so this is one of the, what this does, it will open us, it's all about, again, what is all about climate change in the communities, and, how communities are addressing that. So this particular workshop was required, or is required by the program. This is our second one. We had to do one in-house that was with staff, and then this one included a larger audience. And then I think the third one eventually is open to the public. And,
Next month?
oh, that's right, we just scheduled that. I forgot what the date was, though.
I don't know, it's December sometime.
Yeah. So again, it's all part of the requirements to participate in this program, which opens us up for grants. So we have to prepare an MVP, report. And again, one of the requirements is that we participate in this, what they call the stakeholders meeting. So, we went through many topics, but basically we were looking at environmental issues, societal issues, and
Infrastructure.
infrastructure. So everyone will get an invitation to the public workshop that we need to, or the public meeting that we will have to hold, so. And probably, I think the number one issue that came out of that, or one of the number one issues that came out of that was about dams in town, and particularly the dam that is in Shrewsbury that Northborough owns. And how we need to address it's been an issue for a long time. The dam is deteriorating, as are a lot of the dams, but throughout Massachusetts, not just Northborough.
It's really well done. The consultants did a nice job with that workshop.
Yeah, they're very on top of it.
Okay, so also we have preparing for 2020 town meeting. Due to the time, I'm wondering if maybe we push something like that. Are we going to run out of time if we wait till next meeting to really like?
Well, a couple of things. The Central Mass, that we're working with to prepare, to review our solar bylaw and then and update it, and then also to prepare the hazardous facility bylaw. We had originally scheduled those for tonight, and due to just, time constraints on their part, we postponed that, so they're gonna be coming November 19th. And that, as I've expressed all along here, I mean, while we're coming to the conclusion of the master plan, but that is, I mean, as far as my capacity for what I can do for town meeting, I mean, I'm pretty much there with those two bylaws. So I really wasn't anticipating anything else, to go to town meeting with. I mean, I don't have the time to, unless it's like some quick, spelling mistake, or, I mean, because silly things like that, we still have to go to town meeting with. But unless there's some sort of housekeeping article. Because the project that we started, or at least, again, my interpretation with the ZBA is, was not anything that was gonna go to this year's town meeting. We're still putting together, information for sort of our next, that we scheduled the next joint meeting, but in anticipation of the next joint meeting, to review, a series of, decisions, what variances are typically given, what kind of conditions are typically put on special permits, how do we reflect those back into a zoning change?
Okay,
So that's where I'm at.
Did anyone have?
I do, and I wanted to hand them out tonight to review for next time. These were some that I've been planning on doing all year, and then it came up that it was an application, so I didn't want to talk about it until the application was decided. And I can pass it out. And we can.
Quick, is the master plan, it will not be presented at town meeting, right?
No, I mean, what we can do is,
I think we've talked enough about to the public. I don't even think anybody would want to listen to it at town. Honestly, I just feel like.
If you wanted to, we can just ask, the moderator if you could, if someone could say something in the beginning of town meeting, but it's,
And we've
but
certainly
that's-
had many public meetings where,
I could do a quick summary, like a really quick one, and then everybody can take it home. But one of the things I did want to do, even before the dog thing came on 125 Rice Ave, is a lot of towns are updating their definitions to match Mass General Law. So I put on the first page what a keeper or kennel, a commercial breeder kennel are. I wanted to update our bylaws, so we matched Mass General Law. So that's what I did. And then on the second page, I wanted to talk about, you know, where do we want kennels? And because, you know, after this came up, before this came up, there was a big to-do in Natick, where they took kennels out of residential neighborhoods, because the dog industry is getting really big, and there are a lot of people wanting to do dog jobs. So I just wanted to redefine the kennels and make sure we have a proper place for them. And while I was there, under other business uses, it also mentioned funeral homes are in residential C, and I wanted to take those out while we were in that table, because I don't think anybody really, I mean, we have a funeral home on Main Street. I don't think there's high demand for more funeral homes, and I think if it was next door to someone's house in the residential C, they wouldn't be happy. You'd have the neighborhood out fighting that. So I wanted to add that. And while I was in the other business uses, I also noticed commercial storage facility in Business West. I was just taking that out because commercial storage facilities is like another big warehouse. And I thought we have so many warehouses in industrial, and there's so much leasing space. I don't think we need more warehouses to be built in Business West. I don't think that would fit along with our master plan, where we want the commercial uses in the downtown to be more restaurants and pedestrian friendly. So I thought that was an easy, just take the commercial storage out of Business West. And then in industrial uses, I think light manufacturing, research and development should have a special permit attached to them. It shouldn't be, yes, that it's automatically permitted, because some of those are really intensive uses, and I think it should go through the special permit process. If it's not, then it's automatic. So I had a couple changes, and it's nothing big. It's just changing the use table from yes to special permit.
Amy, with all due respect on the industrial uses, that's huge.
Well, I know, but
I
it
mean,
won't affect anyone who's there now. It's just the open spaces.
But you would have to do, but it throws everyone into nonconformity. So, I mean,
No, it's
again,
still allowed by special permit. It's not prohibiting it.
but whenever you're changing something in the use table, especially taking these out, that, I mean, again, you can all do what you want, but you need to do research on that and how that affects, you know, all of the, I mean, that,
Well,
you
they would
have an
only be-
industrial zone
Right.
for a reason.
But they would only
And-
be non-conforming if I said no. If it's special permit, that doesn't make them non-conforming.
Well, again, I mean, this isn't anything I can do for this year, but that's
Well, as a
my-
planning board, I think we could vote to update the use table if there were certain things that we wanted to discuss. These were all high-intensity
Yeah.
uses that you get big neighborhoods coming out, and there's a lot of people who want more protection. And not saying that it's always gonna be denied, they have to go down the criteria of how it would be in a special permit. But,
So, can we discuss this at next
Yeah,
week's meeting?
yeah.
Yeah, this is just an
9:30?
overview.
Because it's a lot.
yeah,
It's a lot of different areas of concentration.
right. And the last one was the residential use accessory, updating that. I did go to a class 2 weeks ago, and I talked to the lawyer who was running the class, and he said you should, really update your residential use accessory to be, if you wanted to be included inside you can state that, fully inside, because it's up to your building inspector, the leeway he has, the way he reads our zoning. So if you want your town to be more black and white, he said that, you should update. And I took a couple other towns, and I just updated some of the conditions. But it's all in here, and it's really not a ton. It looks like a lot of pieces of paper, because I tried to include it all. But I think after what we just went through, I think that the accessory uses conditions have to be updated.
Is that
That's it.
Okay.
Yep.
Michelle, did you have anything on your radar?
Nope. Nope.
Millie?
Nope, I'm clear.
Good.
Okay, the only other, so one thing not for this year, well, we did talk about the commercial overlay piece. I don't know how that fits in, but one thing, maybe for next year, like if we work with someone throughout the year, I don't know if we need to budget for it in advance or if it's just something we can do, but Anthony and I attended the overlay district class with Jim, and there was a really, I think there's a good opportunity for us to figure out how we can,
Yeah.
but depending on what comes out of the master plan, like what kind of overlay districts we can work with to kind of help, I don't know, fine tune development or incentivize the development that we want, or, just be better planners as a board to like think about what do we want our districts to look like? And if it's heading in one way, is there an overlay we want to put on it to allow for different things? So I don't think that's something we can necessarily solve this year, but I don't know budget-wise, like if we wanted, I don't know if we even need help, but if we wanted to have someone help like take a closer look at overlay districts, I don't know, maybe we can talk about that next time.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I've done, a couple of things. Last year, the year before, I was able to increase our budget for contractual services. And it still is not much, it's not as much as I would like it to be, but I've submitted a budget this year requesting an additional sum of money, so that we do have, it'll be a negotiation, but so that we do have additional funds to do, the research and hire some consultants for this more technical. So with the overlay districts and just, in talking about like the industrial districts too, is that is a very effective way to do your zoning, is an overlay district, as opposed to prohibiting something or putting something into a special permit category, which is, subjective. So instead, you do an overlay district. And that's one of the things that we want to, I think that we should talk about, particularly with the southwest area. So that's why it's not as easy as, it's not as easy as it was discussed, at a prior planning board meeting with, well, can't we just change it from industrial to commercial? You just can't. You just can't change one use to another without doing, an analysis of what it is that you're doing. So with, particularly an overlay district, that might work better down in the southwest than changing it, strictly to, just some sort of commercial use. Oh, I forgot what I was just gonna say something else about town meeting. I'm sorry, Carrie, I forgot.
Can I ask just a quick question, Kathy? So the money that you've requested for budget increase this year, would that cover a sufficient amount to go and hire a consultant to help with this specific, because that's a really important, moving forward with Northborough out of, that industrial into commercial. It's a gateway where people want to see that done correctly, right?
Right.
So it's an investment into your future. Do you feel like the money you have set aside would cover it?
Yeah, I mean, the money that we're, I think right now it's like at 3,000, and I requested 10,000, but we're not gonna get 10,000. So if anything, maybe it'll get bumped up to 5,000, but really that's a one project, that's a one project, one bylaw.
Yeah.
So it's, if we wanted to do something more comprehensive, then we would have to go through, the capital planning process, which is fine, that's how we went about, well, I mean, certainly the master plan, but we've done smaller projects that way. So, or it could be a certain appropriation at town meeting, but the short answer is yes, that we have the short money to do a project like that.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, please.
No, I wanted to, so, thanks for reminding, the thought from that training is it was a Jim, right?
Jim Robbins,
Jim.
yep.
And you were on an email, he had followed up, I had asked about, he had mentioned that there's some legislation going through, or a bill, going through the State House.
One of the housing bills?
A housing bill, and it's late now, but I'd like to maybe talk about it at some point, if you feel it's gonna impact us in our bylaws, or anything about our zoning.
Yeah, I can get, I can get everyone a copy of it, and there was, I don't know if MMA, which is the Mass Municipal Association. I don't know if they've weighed in on it, but they do on a lot of the zoning bills. But the, you know, the planners group has weighed in on it, and I can get that information. The other thing that I wanted to, which actually doesn't have anything to do with zoning, but this is what I forgot and then just remembered, is the, in talking with, you know, having Steris here tonight, late this afternoon or early this evening, I sent everyone an email, and I have a lot of copies here, so I don't know if Debbie put them in front of everybody, so I'll pass these down. But they, Steris has extended an invitation,
Saw that, yeah.
to, so did I
Yeah, I
pass
saw
it
it.
out? Okay, so everyone does have it?
Did you have them?
So those was just the extra. So, you know, that, you can discuss that at your next meeting, Carrie, if you want to, but there's no date associated with this, but Steris has extended an invitation to do a site visit with you, but the closest facility is 3.5 hours away, in New York. And, so that's, again, that's something you can, I mean, you can discuss it now if you want, you don't need to be doing it as part of the public hearing, but, you know, you can certainly discuss it at your next meeting, if that's something that you want to, you know, do as a board. And then the other, and I know it's late, and, if people wanna just take a look at it, and at the next meeting, I gave everyone a paper copy, and then I also emailed you a copy of the site plan approval decision for 0 Hudson Street. That was the
Yep.
land grading.
Yep.
And, the land disturbance. And then, I'm just about done, I'll be done with it over the next day or so, of 41 Lyman Street,
Okay.
for the site plan approval and special permit for that. So I'll send that out to everyone. So those are the 2 decisions from the last meeting.
Okay. If we look next time, will you still meet your timeline?
Yes, yeah, we're still, because you've already, you know, you've closed the hearing, and then you have, you know, I think it's like up to 90.
90 days.
To make, I mean, you've made the decision, it's just signing it and getting it date stamped. So, I mean, you've met the criteria as far as you've made the decision.
Okay.
And then, the only other thing I wanted to bring up was, the December 17th. I don't know if you wanna.
Oh, right, yeah.
You want to look at calendars. And then just real quickly, the only application that's before the zoning board at their November meeting is what Michelle has discussed, that's before the design review right now, which is the Lexus dealership on Route 9, also known as Belmont Street. That's how it's filed, is 14 Belmont Street. But Lexus, the existing dealership, is looking to put on 2 additions and rework some of their parking, and so anyway, so that requires going to the zoning board of appeals. So that's what's before the zoning board of appeals. That's the only application.
Do they need like a dimensional variance?
No, there's no variances. It's a site plan, special permit, groundwater. Are they in groundwater? No. So it's before the zoning board of appeals. So there's no variances.
Okay. So you, did you say you were available another night that week, or was it the whole week?
No, it's just the 17th, let's see. Yeah, it's just the 17th, and then, I mean, if you, again, if you want to meet that week, Jason, do the selectmen meet on December 16th?
No.
Check. The selectmen meet on the 16th, and the prior week on Thursday, the 12th, we have the financial track.
Okay. So I just need to steer clear of the 16th and the 17th. So the 18th or the 19th of that week, if that, you know, if you want to have that second meeting in December, and
Can board members do the 18th or 19th?
I can do.
Or is there a preference?
I prefer the 18th.
18th?
18th? That's Wednesday, right?
yeah, Wednesday, the 18th.
Okay.
Amy, does that work for you?
Yep.
So can you please let Steris know then that that is the
Yep.
next? Okay.
Yeah, so right now, they're scheduled, I mean, you continue to the 3rd, and, yeah, and I'll
Oh,
let
I'm sorry,
them-
that's right, but if they, that's right.
But I mean, if
it's the
they
third.
don't, if they can't get us the information, they'll want to continue it to the
The 18th.
18th, yeah.
Okay.
I just have one more question. The Lexus, you said has a site plan?
Yeah.
Okay, because we're supposed to review the site plans too and send something to.
It's still in design review. It's
Oh.
only.
I thought
made
Kathy
its
said it's in
first-
front of the ZBA.
Right, they're starting with the ZBA, and again, when it's before the zoning board of appeals, you're not required to review the site
Well,
plan.
it says shall. and
You've asked in the past that, if you want them to come in, then you'll have them come in, but,
I mean, it's really very preliminary stages. We haven't even, we went back for feedback. It's only the first of 3 meetings.
But I
So,
think it's
when
gonna
is
be,
it, the ZBA, what meeting they meeting at?
they're at the ZBA on November 26th.
Yeah, so.
So, do we have that application, or we don't have it?
Um,
Is it a site plan with special permit? I'm confused on what this is.
Yeah, it's a site plan, and you probably, because they submitted a couple weeks ago, so you might have gotten it at the last meeting.
I don't think we do. no.
Because the only pile that we have left downstairs is for design review committee.
I don't have.
It's just a site plan with no special permit?
I didn't bring the
Oh, okay.
application up, so I don't, all I know is that it's before the zoning board of appeals, and
Yeah, so, to help you out here, I'm looking at the calendar way over there because my phone just died. So, we're meeting on the 19th for a planning board. We're meeting the applicant on the 14th. And I
Yeah.
think on the 14th, they'll probably have the majority of it wrapped up. So there's probably gonna be something we could present to you on the 19th.
So could you email us out a copy, or we could pick one up?
yeah, I'll check with, because I can visualize where they are on the counter, and it's labeled not as a planning board, so I'll check with Deb.
Okay, so we are looking, assuming it's a site plan with special permit, but we don't know, but we think it is,
Yeah,
then we're going to look at that on the 19th.
is that what you want to do? Do you want to have them
Well,
come in?
it's a site plan with, I'm sorry, I'm so confused about this, but it's a site, we believe it's a site plan with special permit.
Yeah,
Yes, so yes then,
okay, so have them come in?
and they do have to be here for that. I'm asking, do they have to be here for the site plan review?
No, they don't, so I'm asking, so I'm asking you, do you want the applicant to come in? Or do you just want to review it in-house?
Do you just want to review in-house, or do you?
It really is, as Michelle said, I mean, it's really,
very, very minimal.
yeah, it's,
Right.
Yeah.
But
It's like the front of their building, they bumped out a little bit to add a couple more showcase cars.
yeah,
Moving a bathroom to another place, and then bumping out a little bit to make their traffic flow into their maintenance service area flow better. And what we did was, we asked them to duplicate what we did with Honda, which was their signage is more on the roadway, directing people, because they have a tendency to look on the roadway in there when there's a lot of cars around, because they have a lot on their lot. And then we asked them to improve on their landscaping and show us their signage, because they'll be taking down an existing sign and putting up the other one, which is a corporate sign. And so they're following the bylaws on everything, but that's basically what they're doing, just bumping out the front a little bit to add 2 new bays for new cars to go there, more of a showcase area. And then improving the area that services the cars.
So it sounds like an in-house would be appropriate, just not
Yeah,
have the applicant come?
Yeah,
Does
I
that-
mean, you can, but I think it's,
Does that
I
sound?
mean, it's really money
just-
to the
just-
applicant.
just to look at it, you don't have
Yeah.
to come.
Pay their engineer and their attorney and,
Right,
just-
yeah, okay.
yeah.
One other thing I wanted to, just bring up, because we were talking about the master plan, and we were talking about this, town meeting. We talked about at the beginning of the year, we have a financial planning representative. So is there anything that we wanted to bring him in to discuss? Like, one thing I would consider is, because we're doing the master plan, we really wanted to at least I did, want to get started with the downtown revitalization, because that was on the forefront of everybody in the surveys. And I know we can't do that without a visualization survey. So, I mean, I would love to get that next year, or at least get it on the agenda, to get it on the capital plan, if that's what we need. Or can we use CMRPC, like, help to do the visualization survey? Like, do you need to hire a consultant to do it? Or is it something we could do with the hours that we have? I guess that's something I'd want to look into. Because if we don't get it going on any process, then it goes out another year, and I don't know, I guess I'm just ready to jump in and start.
Change a few things?
So an
Right?
update, an update from Tom.
Well, no, I guess we would update Tom if we want him to bring that forth. Like, I guess what I'd like to find out for the next meeting is, can we do a visualization study of the downtown using the hours that we get? Or do we need a consultant and money to do a downtown visualization survey?
Well, I can answer most of that right now if you want. So we're already using our allocation for Central Mass for this year, which you all agreed to, which is for the bylaws updating for town meeting. So we're out of Central Mass hours. And the second thing, and probably the most important thing, is that, coming out of the master plan is, the implementation committee. So the implementation committee is going to be formed, by the Board of Selectmen, once the planning board, or assuming the planning board, adopts the master plan. And then the implementation committee will be put into place. And then the implementation committee is gonna take, the implementation chapter and then determine, what is it that, the town should begin working on first. So the whole capital planning process is such that that was already due, so we're past this year. So that was due a couple of months ago. So we've missed the capital planning, window for FY '21, to be included in FY '21. But you really can't do that until you've started the implementation committee and determined what's, like what are some of the first things that the community is gonna do as far as implementing the master plan. So you're really jumping the gun to say that you wanna do a visualization study when you don't, we haven't even defined what the downtown is. So you really, that would be part of the process, but certainly not the first thing that you would do.
Okay, I just thought the consultants we had talked about were gonna do it, and since they didn't, I just didn't know if we could jumpstart it. But,
No, the downtown visualization, that wasn't part of the master plan.
I know, but it was talked about at one point during the master plan of possibly doing it as a survey or at one of the public meetings, but we didn't do it.
Well, we did ask Tom to come in at some point, so maybe outside of that, we could, maybe as they go through the process, maybe he could come in and update us just in general about financial planning, what's going on, just as a general update at some point. Not critical, I don't think, unless the board feels otherwise. Is it critical? No.
That's good.
So at some point.
Yep.
Okay. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'd make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Motion, meeting adjourned. Thank you.